hot mess.
Welcome. The October 28th, 2025 meeting of the Portsmouth Zoning Board of Adjustment is in session. Just a few things before we begin. Welcome. And if you are here giving a presentation, you have 15 minutes to do this. If you are quite sure it will go over that, we appreciate if you let us know first and we can decide whether we will grant the extra time. If you are making a public comment, then you are given 5 minutes. Okay? So, old business. The request of Charlie Neal and Joe McCarthy, owners for property located at 28 Wooden Street, whereas relief is needed to construct an addition to the rear of the structure, which requires the following. 1, variance from section 10.521 to allow A, 42% building coverage where 30 is allowed, B, 11-foot rear yard where 25 feet are required, and 2, variance from section 10.321 to allow a nonconforming building or structure to be extended, reconstructed, or enlarged without conforming to the requirements of the ordinance. Said property is located on Assessment Map 102, Lot 64, and lies within the general residence B and historic districts. And even though I just read that, this application has been withdrawn. But that's the way we do it. So, item B is up first then. This is new business. A, the request of Double McLLC owners for property located at 134 Pleasant Street, whereas relief is needed for redevelopment of the existing commercial building and construction of horizontal and vertical building expansions for a mixed-use building with below-grade parking and the relocation of drive-through teller lanes, which requires the following. 1, variance from section 10.440, use number 19.4, for a drive-through facility as an accessory to a permitted principal use. And 2, variance from section 10.331 to change the location and use of the drive-through facility. Said property is located on Assessment Map 116, Lot 30, and lies within the Character District 4 and Historic District. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is FX Bruton. I'm with Bruton and Barabee in Dover. I'm here representing the applicant, and with me tonight, Marie Bodie from the applicant, representative, John Shagnon, the project engineer, and Tracy Kozak, the project architect. So if you have any questions that I can't answer, obviously they're here for your benefit. We appreciate your time tonight and rescheduling your busy agenda to meet again. So I appreciate that. Thank you. This is a project that is located on 134 Pleasant Street, and it's the existing Citizens Bank building. It's a rather unique property in that it's in terms of its size, it's over an acre of land. Located basically in that downtown acre. It's downtown area. It's 1.22 acres, and it's also unique in that it's located near the Parrott Street parking lot, which is obviously a large parking area, and along Parrott Street. Really has no abutter, if you will, in terms of being affected by what we plan to do, which is. To put it simply, we're going through a process of developing that property and moving and adding vertical and horizontal addition to the existing what exists on site. So we're going to kind of, if you will, infill that area that is between the existing drive-through and Pleasant Street. And by doing that, and that was suggested at our the planning board when we went for preliminary consultation. In doing that, we would need to take this drive-through, which we understand the property was first used as a bank in 1982. We understand the drive-through has been in basically that configuration for decades. When you passed your character-based zoning 2015, drive-throughs became prohibited use for the C4 and C5, and we're in the C4. I think it's fair to say there are kind of two kinds of drive-throughs, those that are like the one we have, which I think is fairly benign in terms of pulling up to a window, and then those where someone is sitting in a fast food restaurant asking for orders and probably in a more boisterous way than how people conduct their business with the bank. But in any event, if you know the configuration is that the drive-through is located right at a point where it faces Pleasant Street, and in order to bring our building plan and bring the building up to Pleasant Street, we need to rotate the location of that drive-through. It currently consists of 2 lanes and 2 teller transaction opportunities, and we're basically going to rotate that away from what is properties that have basically inhabited use and point it towards the parking lot, which hopefully you would agree would be certainly better off in terms of any interaction that that use could have with any of the surrounding properties. What that also does is it gives us an opportunity to bring that property more in compliance with respect to the character-based zoning that has a build-to line of 10 feet. We're about 100 feet away. We intend to bring the building up to that build-to line. We intend to activate that area so that where you do not have it, you would have a pedestrian-friendly access point to go up and down in front of that area. And so that we see as obviously a significant benefit to doing that. We also would eliminate the drive-up lane in that area, which is an existing curb cut on Pleasant Street as well. So you'd have a much more aesthetically pleasing viewpoint if you were coming down the street on Pleasant Street. So we see all those as very, very positive things in terms of what this does. And again, we're rotating this basically from that position to the other position. What we'll need to do is, and the staff pointed out, we'll need to go to the planning board, obviously. We need to go to the HDC as well, and TAC, and we'll go through all those processes. And a lot of questions that may come up, hopefully will be part of those presentations in that process. So in terms of just the criteria, I'm going to address the public interest and spirit of the ordinance, which considers whether this granting of this relief would alter the essential character of the locality or threaten the public health and safety. And we really see this as addressing safety issues, because if you look at the existing conditions plan, you'll see that there's an area of parking located in between Pleasant Street and the drive-through, and what that does, the only way you can get to the bank is actually walk through the drive-through lanes. And again, as I explained, we're going to rotate away from the abutting uses that might have some current interaction with the existing drive-through. So that, I think, really speaks to again, are we going to alter the essential character vis-a-vis where is the drive-through located? And we believe that we're going to have, again, 2 lanes, 2 transaction windows. And so we don't see that as altering the character. We see the activation of Pleasant Street being in the public interest, and certainly spirit of the ordinance being observed, providing for a safer access to the building, so you don't have to walk through those drive-through lanes, and eliminating a curb cut on Pleasant Street as well. Granting the relief requested, would that do substantial justice? That test does consider the present use of the property. Again, this is, we believe, just changing the location of an existing non-conforming use that's been there for decades, doing it in a respectful way, doing it in a well-thought-out way. We still have to obviously go, as I said, to HDC and Planning Board, so staff asked us to put a note on the plan that the actual configuration of the buildings would change. But what we also wanted to do was pay attention particularly to the performance standards of a drive-through, had it been permitted. And so we did do that. There are certain setback requirements that we are required to meet for any drive-through, and we do meet those. And we considered all of that in terms of trying to design this in a way that would work, but also would not impact the public in any way. And so in terms of substantial justice, there's this balancing test of harm to the applicant versus basically the harm to the public, and we would respectfully submit that this does not harm the public. In fact, it increases the safety, as I mentioned, and we are basically pointing this use, which I don't think is going to be that offensive, but we're pointing it towards one of the bigger parking lots in that area. Diminution in value. Again, I think this will result in significant aesthetic upgrades. We're going to be, again, becoming more conforming vis-a-vis the yard area that we have. We currently, again, are about 100 feet back from Pleasant Street. We'll bring this building up to the build-to line, and again, create that walkway and that activation that we think will be a positive benefit vis-a-vis any values of the surrounding properties. And last is the unnecessary hardship, and again, that you start your focus on, is this a unique parcel? And as I've mentioned, it's a very large size for that area, 1.22 acres. It's located near the downtown. And again, it's located just adjacent to one of the bigger outdoor parking lots in that area. And it currently has, it's unique in that it has this existing use already. A few banks in the city in a more downtown location have those as well, and we highlighted that in our application. So we think it's a unique area, and we think that location of this, as we've explained, assists again in terms of the aesthetic aspect of this, the impact to the surrounding properties that have habitation or use, and so we think that all of those things lead to the sense that we are basically being consistent with the ordinance, but again, just simply trying to rotate that element of that existing non-conforming use, and doing it in a respectful way and a well-thought-out way, and one that, again, will have to go through a review, but we would continue to anticipate that we'll always be meeting the performance standards that are set forth within the ordinance vis-a-vis the requirements for drive-throughs. So that's our plan, and again, we hope that you can grant that relief, and then we'll move forward.
Questions? Yes, Ms. Murchison?
So looking at this plan, it looks like the vehicular access to the property, including the surface parking spaces, and the garage, I think, is going to be underneath the building.
Yeah, and I apologize, I meant to mention that as well.
Okay, so it comes in through the same area as this proposed drive-through.
Yes.
Okay. And there's a lot of pedestrian traffic around this area because of the Parrot Avenue lot and going down to the courthouse and whatnot. So the only way the pedestrians really will be able to cut through this property, frankly, is through that same new entryway. So this is how pedestrians and the drive-through customers and the vehicular traffic will be accessing this property.
Well, we're going to have walkways from Pleasant Street that will avoid that if pedestrians are walking in that direction, which are depicted on the plan. And also, all the parking, basically, for someone who actually wants to go into the bank is going to be along the side of that portion of the building, but with access, again, to sidewalks that they currently didn't have. So we think we're definitely enhancing that aspect of it. And of course, drive-throughs, even though they're not permitted, certainly help with parents, with kids, the elderly, the disabled. So we still obviously want to provide that, and a lot of banking now goes on in that fashion. So the performance criteria that is set forth is something we were asked to pay particular attention to, and all those criteria are met in terms of the design that we have on the plan.
Okay, thank you. My concern is that it's combined with basically the driveway into the property.
Yeah, I mean, we do have a deeded access point through the parking lot as well, but the main intent would be to come down in that fashion and then park in that location. And John, you can speak more to that as well.
Yes, thank you, FX. John Chagnon from Haley Ward. If we could go to the existing conditions plan, I think you'll see that there exists currently, what you're talking about are the people from the Parrot Avenue parking lot cutting through this property. And there is one spot, it keeps jumping around on me there, sorry. There is a significant hedge here that prevents that, and then there's a landscape area here that prevents that. So there is one set of stairs here that people can walk through, but I think the predominant pedestrian movement from the Parrot Avenue parking lot would either be out here, or should be out here to the street, or out here to the back alley up there. So I don't think that people have a right to cross the property as a matter of right. There could be a fence put up there if it became a safety concern. The driveway layout, if you go to the proposed site plan, has plenty of room to maneuver for the cars coming in and out. There would be, the main entrance would be Pleasant Street. That start to answer that question in a way?
Yes, and I just have
You can go.
no, okay, just a follow-up question. So you would open up the access and relocate court parking? What does that mean?
Core parking, relocate core parking?
Court.
Court, okay, sure. So the situation right now, go back to the existing conditions plan, is the property, the city of Portsmouth owned the entirety of this going out to Pleasant Street to Parrot Ave, and they then sold off the courthouse lot and kept, there's an access here that was deeded to the courthouse lot. Now, currently, in the subject property, the entrance pretty much in the same location existing as proposed, but you come down here, and then there's this awkward turning movement here that allows you to exit either into the Parrot Avenue parking lot or out through the courthouse property. And if you go to the proposed, what we're proposing is to align that, take out the awkward turning movement. If you could go up just a tad with the view, And then that allows this to have a couple more parking spaces added to the Parrott Avenue parking lot. It would also create a situation where people coming from Court Street that currently tend to or may go through private property, the PHA housing project, to get to Parrott Avenue parking lot in a more expeditious manner would be hopefully discouraged from doing that, because they can't just come down and bop into here. They got to go all the way out and then come back around. So that design feature was brought to the planning board concept meeting and discussed, and in general was, I believe, favorably received. So does that answer that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Question? Yes, Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question, this does have to go through the Historic District Commission. Where are you at in that process? And if it has started, what feedback have you received on the roof cover over the drive-through?
Yep, I will let Tracy answer that, but I will also point out there's actually a performance standard with respect to the roof, the canopy over the drive-through, which we looked at and meet as well. So that actually is met per the zoning, but I'll let Tracy give you a little bit more info on that.
Good evening, Tracy Kozak. Yes, we've had one work session, and we took some feedback. Well, we had 2 work sessions. The first one was a more contemporary design. They didn't like that. We came back with this more traditional design, which was received much more favorably. We had a number of more detail-oriented comments at that time. At that earlier version was a little bit different than what we're showing now. We've put HDC on hold just temporarily to get your feedback, and with your feedback, we will then respond accordingly and proceed with further HDC reviews.
Okay, thank you. My next question, if I may continue. Looking at your level 1 floor plan, you're drawing PB 0.2 on page 40 of our packet, lists the back portion, first floor of the back portion of the combined building, which I believe is basically the footprint of the existing building, as a retail space. Trying to understand, and again, you know, we don't allow, part of the driver for not allowing drive-throughs in these districts is to make it a more pedestrian-friendly experience. I know you mentioned, like, well, you know, there's good drive-throughs and bad drive-throughs. This is the good drive-through kind. But, you know, the issue with ones that have speakers and whatnot, or louder speakers, really, even banks have some speaker capability. We have a setback in our ordinance from residential uses that covers that eventuality. Yeah. What, in my mind, what the character districts are really trying to drive is a pedestrian-friendly experience, which drive-throughs traditionally are not amenable to. So towards that end, I'm trying to understand, what do you see as the pedestrian paths to get to this retail that you have in the back part of the new combined building?
So if we can go to the site plan again. The pedestrian experience is one of access. If you're coming down Pleasant Street, this is access here that will take you to that retail, and also to I believe to the residential. And then further down Pleasant Street, you have access here to the banking facility, and here to the banking facility. And then there are parking spots here that would be accessible to that retail facility. This way, the residents, as mentioned, there's underground parking, so the bank employees and residents would go into that and access interior to the building. And there's also going to be there is access here through an easement that goes between the Portsmouth Fire Station and the fire condominiums, as they're called, or the old fire station condos. And there'll be some connections there with a pocket park that would enhance that pedestrian experience. But people now walk up there from Parrott Avenue parking lot.
Okay, so you're indicating that the primary way of getting to that retail space is to walk down that alley, basically?
If you're a pedestrian.
Right, pedestrian, I'm talking pedestrian access,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Is there any access on the parking lot side
Yes,
to that retail space?
yes. You'll see there's a sidewalk at the edge of the parking spaces, and then there's an entrance here.
Okay. My last question is, sometime in the past year, I can't remember exactly when, I couldn't find it, searching through, but there was a decision that this board made to allow this lot to serve as a parking lot for another property that was owned by the same owner. What is the status of that? I don't know if you have the information on that or not. And how is that parking requirement incorporated into this current design?
Yes, there's, I believe, 4 spaces that are reserved for that, and they would be incorporated within the underground parking.
Okay, I thought it was more spaces than that, but okay.
You know, off the top of my head, because I did that agreement, it may be 5? 5, okay. Yeah, it's 5.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Jones.
Yeah, I just have one question. Actually, I guess I've got 2. On page 43, the roof drawing appears to show at the bottom of the thing that you've got parking spaces in the travel lanes. I assume that's left over from the drawing that you showed at the planning board, which showed a very different layout and had 37 surface parking spaces. Is that accurate?
I believe it is. You can confirm that, Tracy?
Yeah, the roof plan is really just to show the roof. There is an underlay of the existing or older shown underneath the current there. They're overlapped. The older one shouldn't be on that. But to refer to the site plan, I'll ask you to disregard looking at the roof plan for the parking striping. We should just turn that off completely.
Okay, so when you made thank you. There was a comment made earlier that the planning board seemed to like the changes to the traffic flow that were made at the left-hand, what I'm calling the left-hand side of the property,
Right.
back side of the property. But they didn't see the location of the drive-through lanes as they're shown here tonight, correct? They saw the original location of the drive-through lanes, which showed them in the middle of the building?
I will again defer to John, because I wasn't at that hearing.
Yeah, so as events progress, the plan that was brought to the planning board had the drive-through in the same location that it is in now. And we were mistakenly assuming that that would suffice to not have to come to this board, but the window was being moved to the other side, and that meant that it wasn't the same exactly, and there probably were other reasons why it wasn't. So we were sort of on an assumption there that after we were informed that we would need to come to this board, we decided that there's a better location for the drive-through if we're going to have to move it and get relief. This is better. This is a better design than having to come under a building. We eliminated a curb cut on Pleasant that was problematic, we believed. And so, in addition, the other plan did have the access to that coming down the property line. And so I think in hindsight, it wouldn't meet the 30-foot drive-through lane separation. So there were some other things that actually didn't comport to the way the ordinance is written.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Excuse me, did you just say third drive-through lane?
No,
Oh, okay, I misunderstood.
I apologize.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in favor of this plan? Anyone who would like to speak in opposition?
Hi, my name is Peter Smith. I live at 206 Court Street. I'm in a butter. I also represent the 160 signatures on the pause-portsmouth.com petition on change.org. All 160 signatures have been validated by change.org. And I request that this be declined. The simple point is that it's self-created hardship. There is no hardship here. Section 10.233.31 of the Portsmouth zoning ordinance, echoed in the board's procedural rules, limits hardship finding to a special condition of the property that distinguish it from other properties. Neither business preferences nor site history satisfies that test. The current hardship claim that the lot historically contained a drive-through and that the tenant desires one is self-created, arising entirely from the choice to continue the use that the ordinance no longer allows. The board's own rules reaffirm that mere inconvenience or the need for financial advantage does not constitute unnecessary hardship. Extensions of non-conforming use violates zoning intent. Section 10.331 provides that the lawful non-conforming use may not be extended, enlarged, or changed except in conformity with this ordinance. The applicant's plan to relocate and expand the drive-through is precisely such an extension in direct conflict with the CD4 prohibition. There's no demonstrable hardship. The application identifies no unique site condition that prevents reasonable use under existing zoning. The claimed hardship stems from tenant preference and property size, conditions common throughout downtown and not grounds for variance. The property can readily accommodate a conforming use without a drive-through. Number 6, public interest in precedent. Existing drive-through banks within CD4 and CD5 are grandfathered nonconformities, not precedents for expansion. Zoning reforms adopted in 2015 were designed to phase such uses out. Granting this variance would signal a reversal of that policy direction and erode confidence in the city's character-based zoning system. Next, neighborhood character and safety impacts. Relocating vehicle circulation toward the Parrott Avenue lot and residential edges increases vehicle idling and emissions. Next, substantial justice and property value. Denying this request would not diminish the value of their property. They have no claim to hardship, and it should be denied as a result. Again, this is pause-coliving.com. It's a change.org petition signed by 160 residents, all validated. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone to speak to, for, or against?
Good evening, Elizabeth Bratter, property owner, 159 McDonough Street. I'm speaking to, for, or against this variance. You get to decide. Drive-throughs are not allowed uses in CD5 and CD4 zoning. Of course, the purpose of coming here is to request a variance. In this case, the decision cannot be made in a vacuum. All aspects of this property and the surrounding area must be considered. Most of the drive-throughs in downtown that already exist have been here since the 1980s. This lot currently has a drive-through. However, the bank and the drive-through are proposed to be moved to the front of the lot, which is currently a parking lot. And they will be facing and abutting historical things on Pleasant Street. This lot sits in the very historical part of Portsmouth and is in the historic district, with quite a few historical homes next to and across the street. Some have been very meticulously reconstructed in just the last year or two. Drive-throughs are not necessary for banks. There are thousands of banks inside of Walmarts and grocery stores throughout New Hampshire and the country. They are visited regularly, yet they do not have a drive-through. Moving banks inside of stores has been a growing trend over the last few years. The other change in banking has to do mostly with automated interactions, such as taking pictures of checks for deposits, transferring funds between accounts, paying your rent online, all by cell phones or computers. So what does the future hold? Do we need drive-throughs? The problem with the proposed drive-through is the most recent location that they have showed will remove the originally proposed somewhere between 20 and 30 parking spaces on this lot and leave around 11 for both the bank and the proposed retail space. Have you ever been to the TD Bank in downtown? They have 24-plus spaces that are guarded most of the time, and they are full, and they don't have a retail location. So what's going to happen when you put a 10,000 square foot retail location next to a 7 to 10,000 square foot bank? The drive-through could have very many unintended consequences for the neighborhood, as well as the parking problem that already exists in the Parrot parking lot. Say that 5 times fast. These two commercial units will need to provide around 60 parking spaces, which means they will be short at least 49 by adding the drive-through as proposed. This development is not in the downtown overlay district, so 60 spaces means 60 spaces. How do developers explain not needing parking spaces for, so many developments around town? Everyone will walk. They'll take the bus. They know how to get to the location on the bike. So what if we have winter? They don't need the space. In this case, why would you need a drive-through if everybody's walking, riding their bike, and taking the bus? There are some key aspects the proposed drive-through needs to be considered when you look at the criteria for the variance. Location, not only for the drive-through itself, but also for the bank and the historic neighborhood. How will the drive-through impact all of them? Is it really necessary? If the drive-through is needed, more of the required parking should be provided as well, because that says driving is necessary. If this drive-through is to be approved, it should include some very specific stipulations relating to the location and it not taking up any more parking spaces, such as putting it under the building like you would in a hotel. That it be located in a way that does not interfere with the historic nature of Pleasant Street, like everybody driving by from Pleasant to Parrot wants to look at that drive-through. Please include that if the lot is a drivable lot, that they need to find more parking, which is required. It is not just the criteria, it is how they are applied to the conditions of this lot. It is trusted that all aspects of this lot will be considered when reviewing the variance for the drive-through. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else 2, 4, or against?
Patricia Bagley, 213 Pleasant Street. I am speaking against the request for a waiver. I can't speak to the technical details that you were used to in making your decision. I have studied the diagrams. I've walked the property. I walk it many times because I live just down the street. And this doesn't seem safe to me. What's being proposed seems like a hodgepodge. When you walk there now, even though the Citizens Bank itself is ugly, the drive-through is set back, and you really don't even notice it. The landscaping just gives it a very calm appearance. And so what they're proposing is moving this kiosk way up front, and then there's a landscaped area in the middle, and it just seems to me like to be very unsafe. Too many drive-throughs. They often speak of the Parrot lot. Well, the Parrot lot doesn't belong to this developer. It belongs to the city. And so speaking about driving through there, driving around the back, it just I think it's just overextending, and I am speaking against this. Thank
Okay,
you
thank
very
you.
much.
2, 4, or against?
Defer to any other abutter if they want to come up before me, but just to respond to a few things. The drive-through exists, so it's already there, and we're talking about moving what is an existing non-conforming use. We're not talking about creating a new element to this area where it doesn't already exist. Obviously, I think the board understands that we'll have parking underground, and the employees, in addition to the residents, would be there. So that issue really shouldn't be the driving force here. I think, too, that to maintain the driveway, a drive-through, makes sense, because if the intent is to eliminate it, you've then taken away something that actually reduces the stress of any parking situation, so that they drive through and take care of the business again, if they're a parent with kids or disabled or elderly, and so they don't have that negative consequence on the parking aspect. And just to address some of the other issues, often people come up to you and say there's no hardship, but the test isn't really, is there a hardship? It's, is there an unnecessary hardship? And that's in the statute, and that's in your application, and that's the test. It's not, is there hardship? The question is are there unique characteristics of this property that would then allow the use, and would it be consistent with the spirit of the ordinance to allow the use? And if that is the case, it would be unnecessary to apply the restriction to the applicant. And that's kind of how that reads, but people don't express it that way. And in this case, this is entirely unique. We don't own the Parrott Street parking lot, but the location is unique. It is in an area where a large parking lot exists. And when you think of the issue of the access, we're going to make the access better, if you will, in terms of eliminating the drive-throughs that are non-conforming, the drive lanes. But we're also going to result in a more conforming structure being built to the line and all of that. But if you look at any negative consequence of any drive-through, if it's interaction with the public, this is moving it from an area where it's closer to public uses, people uses, if you will, and pointing it in a direction away from that. So it seems to us that it would be reasonable to find that this is unique, particularly because we're talking about an existing use, and we're making that better, and not only because of what I just said, but again, what I said earlier, in that the current use requires pedestrians to walk through the drive-through lane, and that obviously is a safety issue that we are addressing by not having that be the case. And then adding all the other pedestrian points of access to the building that John described for you. So I think all in all, it's unnecessary to apply the restriction in this instance because of those special conditions of this property, its size and its location, and its ability to offer all of those more conforming elements just by moving the existing use from one point and pointing it to another point. Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
You may.
Thank you. So could you just explain a little bit more, because there's really not a lot of information in our staff memorandum on the parking. I know it's kind of been indicated by some of the interested parties that you are substantially below what you need for parking. And there's a reference that you might be seeking a parking conditional use permit from the planning board. Do you have any assessment on what your parking is? Obviously, we know 5 spots are dedicated to another property. What's the remaining, and do you think you will be having to go for a conditional use permit?
I think our point of reference with the staff was, in order to get to the HTC so that they can now make a more informed decision, they need to understand if we can just rotate this. It's very kind of simply said only that way. How the design elements change and the parking needs change will likely be a part of that process. But we don't anticipate, if we need to ask for any parking relief from a CUP process from the planning board, that it would be significant. I can tell you that with due respect to the abutter, that she looked at the surface parking but did not incorporate in that analysis the underground parking, which will be significant at all. So we will not be 60 spaces short, because there was no calculation in that presentation of the underground parking.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Phyllis.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just have a question. I was just wondering if you could answer whether the net change in asphalt is increased or decreased with the change in orientation of the drive-through, specifically the asphalt dedicated to the drive-through only, as opposed to for the parking.
Right.
Well, I don't know if I can granulate it down to the last part of your question, but the site, as we've looked at the open space, will be well above, like, twice what the requirement is in open space. And so we're confident that that will be appropriate and that we can handle the drainage that's going to be generated.
Okay, yeah.
Say right now, whether it's an increase or decrease, I think some of that depends on the final surfaces, but definitely we'll have about twice as much open space as is required.
Okay, I guess, yeah, so my line of thinking was that we have a current existing drive-through with a certain orientation that requires a certain amount of asphalt dedicated to that drive-through. And with this new orientation, whether or not there was more or less asphalt dedicated to that drive-through.
Okay, yeah, I think I can say for sure that that existing, if we want to go to the existing plan, dedicates more real estate, because the drive-through comes off and all of this pavement here is needed to access it. So that's reduced now to a little loop out here. And in fact, if you go to the proposed site plan, really the area dedicated to the drive-through is here. And this plan is at a different scale than the other one. It looks bigger because it's 20 scale, the other plan is 30 scale. So I think I can say quite clearly that there's less pavement dedicated to the drive-through.
Okay, thank you.
And the drive-through has a pretty specific queue, 3 cars. The bank has studied this extensively. Not only do they need the drive-through, as it is something that the customers want, it is a feature that they need to have. They know that if there's 3 cars in the drive-through queue, that people are going to use the ATM lane, or they're going to park and go inside. So that is appropriately sized, if that helps also answer the question.
Thank you. Okay. I'm sorry.
Just have one follow-up question, if I could, with John Chagnon, unless I don't know if other people want to speak or, okay. So you had talked about the planning board being in favor of the betterment of vehicular circulation down near the courthouse. Did you say that the vehicles came in off Court Street?
So currently, if you go down Court Street, you can take a right turn before the Portsmouth Housing Authority building and go around the back of it, and you'll end up in this lane here behind the new building, and you can drive out. And there's signage there that discourages it, but I can tell you from the staff that operates that facility that people ignore the signage and they cut through that way.
Okay, I thought that that road was eliminated when the new workforce housing came online, so,
No, it was needed to provide circulation for the fire department, so you couldn't just cut it off.
okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, last call, 2 for or against? Excuse me? You may come.
Elizabeth Bratter, property owner, 159 McDonough Street. I thought I'd clarify the parking. There are 46 units proposed, I believe, 2 penthouses on the roof, if I did that right. 41 parking spaces, most of them tandem in the basement. Retail space outside of the DOD requires, I believe, 1 spot for every 300 square feet. It's a 10,000 square foot place. That's 33 more parking spaces. The bank was originally proposed as 7,000 square feet. Now it's 10,000 something square feet, which again would need, they have a different criteria. I believe it's 1 for every 350, but pretty much another 30 spaces. So you're talking that they really need 100 spaces. They are providing 41, of which 5 will be used by someone else. According to this, I counted 11 spaces on the ground outside. They will not only need a variance or a CUP or whatever you want to call it, they're going to need a lot of reasons for not using the parking. The building design could be modified to incorporate that drive-through like hotels run, that it's kind of like an entrance in and out. I'm not the designer. I know they have one of the best architects in the city here that would probably be able to come up with something for this. You could also flip-flop the buildings and put the bank on the back, but maybe the bank wants to be on the front. Retail might be nice and residential on the front, and the back have the bank. But that's just my thoughts outside of the box in regards to the drive-through. I trust that you will keep that in mind, that if the drive-through is designed the way it is, that's 11 more parking spaces off of that lot that have to go somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 for or against? The public hearing is closed.
Yeah, I just want to offer one comment since we've spent a lot of time on parking. If you go back and look at what was presented to the planning board, which admittedly was a little bit different than what we're looking at here, the package that they prepared back then and says that they expected that there would be a total of 83 parking spaces, and the total required was 46. So that also said that they had 37 outside, which they don't have now. I think they've got 11 outside. So I believe one of the applicants said they thought they would have an excess, but based on what they presented to the planning board, it does look like they have a small excess of somewhere between 5 and 10 spaces on the design. I just don't want us to get too hung up on exactly what the parking requirements are, because I'm not sure that's really before us today anyway.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Ram.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so some thoughts. I do think that it was quite intentional in our ordinance to eliminate the allowance for drive-throughs in the CD4 and CD5. I think there's a desire to move the downtown core areas away from a car-centric way of life and get more towards pedestrian and other types of transportation, bikes and whatnot. And certainly many other things that we talk about with not requiring as much parking within downtown structures is also some of the same mindset there. Let's go and put cars in some centralized garages and have it be more of a pedestrian experience. That said, obviously there's people with mobility issues. You have to have some level of accommodation for folks along those lines, but the goal is to try and reduce it. And I guess, so the lens I'm putting this through, I would agree with the applicant's argument that one of the unique characteristics of this property, it is butted up against a city parking lot, nothing that we anticipate ever being developed in any way. So that is something that's different about this property relative to the others in the CD4 and CD5. That kind of says, yeah, maybe a drive-through use could be something that could be recreated here. My more fundamental concern with this, what's proposed here, is that I really do think it segregates off the pedestrian experience, which is really to the key of, again, what I think the zoning ordinance is trying to accomplish, and that I think it creates sort of an island for the back property. I know that the applicant tried to make the argument, well, we got the alleyway that comes down that can get you some access into the retail space. But looking at their drawings, there are 2 stairwells that they have for the residences in the back structure, which will be pretty full. I mean, it's proposed to be a co-living arrangement. One of those stairwells is immediately adjacent to the proposed drive-through location. The other one is on the back side of the property, closer to the sort of that fire station pass-through, which, again, really that isn't like a naturally, people wouldn't necessarily think, hey, I'm going to go walking down this hilly alleyway to go get to either where I live or whom I'm visiting with there. Sure, some, maybe not all the residents, some of the residents will go in and use the parking and go up the stairwells or take the elevator that way. And I do like where the actual entrance to the underground parking is located. It's on the back end of the property. Again, sort of away from where the pedestrian flow would be coming off of Pleasant Street. But I really do think that the drive-through that's being proposed here cuts that flow. Yeah, you could put some crosswalks in, but it's just not going to be a natural experience to want to walk through that area to go and get to those natural pedestrian corridors in the back. In terms of parking, I mean, if they're so completely, I would agree with Mr. Neese. I mean, first of all, the planning board's taken that away from us. They don't want us to have it anymore. That's fine, go and have it. But again, if they're off by, dozens and dozens of spots, they would maybe add like 10 spots maximum by eliminating the drive-through. So I don't think that's a consideration here. To me, it's really coming down to how does this set the property up in terms of a pedestrian experience. And I think that if we were sort of reversed, where you had the more residential use up in front with another sort of non-bank use up there, and then maybe put the drive-through way at the back, maybe that might make some more sense, where it's more of a car-centric corner of the property, next to the courthouse parking, next to the city's parking. But stuck right in the middle here, I'm just having a very hard time saying that would that just goes against fundamentally what we're trying to accomplish with the ordinance.
There is an attendee online for hand raised that I missed.
Okay.
If you guys want to reopen the public hearing.
There is someone online, and the request is to open the public hearing again for this person. They were there, and we missed it.
I think we need a motion to reopen.
Yes.
Motion to suspend the rules so we can open up public hearing?
Motion
Second.
Okay, now we need a motion to open the meeting again.
I just did.
Well, that was the motion
That
to
was
suspend the rules.
the rules.
Motion to open public
To reopen the
comment.
public hearing.
Reopen, yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No.
Do I need
Okay.
a second first, or is it?
I'm sorry. I do this all
Second.
the time when we're
There you
just
go.
doing a vote.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aaron Prue, would you like to speak on this application? You'll have to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Thank you. I was sending messages just because I had my hand raised. Thank you for reopening. Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Erin Prue, 118 Pleasant Street and 99 Marne Ave. I'm both an abutter to this property and also a real estate professional, and I work extensively in the market downtown. I'm speaking tonight to respectfully urge the board to deny the variance request for 134 Pleasant Street. While the applicant describes the proposal as an improvement, it conflicts with the intent of the zoning ordinance, the character District 4 standards, and the city's master plan vision for a walkable and pedestrian-oriented downtown. The board's own rules call for decisions that strictly follow the adopted zoning ordinance and state statutes. A variance should only be granted when every legal criterion is clearly met, not simply because a proposal looks better than where it is now. Drive-throughs are prohibited in the district for a reason. They introduce car-focused activity to areas meant to prioritize people and walkability. As both a direct abutter to this and a real estate professional, I can speak directly on the impact of the surrounding property values. Replacing the green space that's out front with a large building and a large drive-through traffic area with the pavement, idling cars, this will make this stretch of Pleasant Street much less desirable. Buyers and tenants consistently value Portsmouth's walkability, the historic character, the landscape settings, particularly down this stretch. When those qualities are replaced with more buildings and asphalt in this particular area and vehicular circulation, property values decline, both for adjacent parcels and the broader neighborhood. It's also important that the Historic District Commission previously expressed concern that this building was set too close to Pleasant Street and feels imposing, because I did hear a comment or a question earlier about what the HDC thought of this, and that was a comment by public comment as well as members of the HDC, and that issue remains unresolved, and this plan, combined with the added drive-through lanes, only amplifies that impact. Approving this variance would weaken the city's ability to uphold the very standards that define downtown Portsmouth: walkability, human scale design, and neighborhood livability. In short, this project moves us further from those goals, not closer to them. I have very much appreciation for all of your work and your service to the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now the public hearing is closed again.
We opened it up, and if they
Oh, we
want to
did, all
provide.
right. I thought that was an exception, because they weren't here. Okay.
Yes, thank you, John Shagnon again. If you could put up the site plan, and I didn't respond appropriately to Mr. Reum's comments earlier. I think there's easy ways to actually increase the pedestrian access that that you speak of, and I think I can point that out. This walkway that comes off of Pleasant Street can easily be connected to a walkway here that would then either connect this way but also connect this way. So just to point out that in the process of going through with the site plan approvals, we'll definitely bring that into the design and try to connect through the site more appropriately. That's less of a walk from Pleasant to the facilities than if you look at the existing walk path. It crosses a very large swath of pavement, so there would be some very distinct and short crossings, but we could add sidewalks, and thank you for allowing me to speak again.
Thank you. Okay, 2 for, against?
Close it, please.
I'm going to try.
Tracy Kozak, if I just want to respond to some of the historic elements. The Langdon House, of course, you know, it's across the street. Right now, the drive-through faces the Langdon House in this proposed condition. It will be screened by buildings and landscaping, and of course, it will go through HDC. The current traffic pattern of the drive-through points the headlights right at the Langdon House. And there are photos in your packet of the historic conditions of this site, which had houses along the street. We've set it back the maximum allowed by zoning, which is 10 feet maximum. We go further if we can, but that's what's allowed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, 2 for, against? The public hearing is closed. Yes, Ms. Murchison?
So I echo a lot of what Mr. Reum's concerns are about this. I do think there was an intentionality about taking away drive-throughs. I recognize that there is an existing drive-through on the property. However, this project is a much more intense use with the redevelopment of it. I think that this I know that this is a TAC and planning board issue about the traffic circulation in and out, but there is a lot of pedestrians that cut around and through this property. And I think having a drive-through combined with the entrance to the property, combined to people parking in the property, people getting into the back to access the garage is really problematic from a health, safety, and welfare view. I think also what we're seeing now is that, you know, the CD4, CD5, which is more pedestrian friendly, allows the public to kind of get invited into the property. You're going to have a huge swath on one side of this that is really going to be dedicated to the access into the property by vehicles. I understand that, but I think that adding a drive-through to it is really problematic.
Would anybody like to make a motion?
So, not ready yet to make a motion, but just to add a couple more things. And do appreciate Mr. Shagnon trying to make it sound somewhat better, but I still see this as a, pedestrian path that's going to have to cross, through an ATM queuing line, through a drive-through queuing line, through a path to get to parking garage, and other parking spots. It's really not the preferred. I mean, what we really want is we want to keep the pedestrian experience tight to the actual building itself, right? That creates what we're trying to do is create an inviting, walkable sensibility of buildings and people interrelating with each other. And I think that's not what would be happening here. Second is, there was talk that a bank really needs to have a drive-through. There are several banks that are in the downtown area that are, taking up spaces that do not have that drive-through. I think in a modern bank, it's not something that's 100% necessary. Is it a convenience that some people still take advantage of, perhaps? But there's certainly other banks that are successfully using other locations that do not have a drive-through capability.
Okay. Mr. Mattson.
Well, yeah, so I'm inclined to make a motion, but my motion would be to approve, and I don't know if I can convince people, so I could go forward with it, or if someone wants to make a motion to deny, we could try that one first, or
Does anybody have a second for Mr. Mattson?
my motion to approve. Okay, well, that answers that.
At least you tried.
Well, I guess I'll just make some comments then.
Yes,
Tell
us what you think.
Okay, so big picture, I heard comments both, essentially comments that were, it's too car friendly, and I heard other comments that, it's too pedestrian friendly. I mean, I think the reality is, it's not a zero-sum game, and it's a multimodal character district. You can access it by foot. There's bike racks proposed. You can access it by bike. You can access it by car. A lot of the character-based reasons, including the maximum of a 10-foot setback from Pleasant Street, is for the pedestrian experience, and this is moving the drive-through situation away from Pleasant Street. I understand you can see it from, or you would experience it through the municipal Parrot parking lot, but technically you're not supposed to walk across someone else's property. The proper way to leave Parrot Ave would be onto city property and easements and whatnot. So I think if you're going to put a drive-through anywhere, and again, the only variance being asked for here is for a drive-through, nothing about parking or setbacks from streets and stuff. This is a unique lot. It's big. There's interesting egress scenarios. It is adjacent to the municipal lot. And to be honest, to me, the curb appeal from Pleasant Street is actually improved with this situation, but that's an aesthetic opinion. And again, if drive-throughs were allowed here, all the criteria are met. It's just that drive-throughs aren't allowed. So even though there's already one here, and this could be viewed as an improvement, it's just that it's not allowed anymore. Whether or not that intention was for fast food type drive-throughs or whatever can be debated. But yeah, I guess those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Anybody?
I'll go in.
Okay.
Oh, I think, Mr. Ream, did you have your?
No, he didn't.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. I make a motion to deny the application as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Having gone through this and everybody's looking at the drive-through, and I agree with what Board Member Rion and Margison said about the drive-through. We've tried to pack a lot on this, and it leads to some interesting questions. That the drive-through is basically an afterthought to keep the bank, considering how you designed it. You've opened up access to the court for 9 parking spaces, so now we have an access to the court from Pleasant Street. Don't think that was intended, and we have the access to the garage. But first criteria, 10.233.21, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. No, granting the variance would be against the public interest. As they stated before, we want to get rid of drive-throughs in the downtown. This is slightly out of the overlay district, but still the same. Granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance. No, it would not observe the spirit of the ordinance, as Mr. Rion and Ms. Margison have already said. I don't know when this drive-through was approved, because there's nothing in the record about it. Probably before I moved to Portsmouth 35 years ago. That being said, I don't think you've met at least 2, possibly 3, because your hardship narrative talks about the lot, but doesn't talk anything about why you need the proposed drive-through moved. That's it.
Does the second have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll double down. To me, I mean, it only needs to fail on one of the criteria. To me, it really is the first 2 criteria that this proposal is falling down on. Really, the ordinance. There's 2 things to the ordinance. One is to sort of reflect what's currently there, but the other part is to reflect what the desire is for the future of a particular neighborhood. And part of this is really trying to do a philosophical change, which agreed that there is currently a historic drive-through that's on the property, but the property was also much more open. It's much more of from a car-centric time. It was a time when banks just took old empty properties because they had failed and they were the only people that had money left, and so they built what they needed to go and make their bank successful. I appreciate that the applicant wants to do something with this, rebuild it. I think that ultimately the whole structure itself will be an improvement overall for this lot. I just think specific to continuing this, previously allowed use but not allowed anymore because we are trying to change it, is in violation of the characteristics of the neighborhood. Certainly, as it exists overall. These aren't very many spots, and most of them are old uses. And really, where we want it to go, where the spirit of the ordinance is trying to go for the future, which is really to make things more pedestrian focused. The amount of parking really isn't an issue here. I would agree with Mr. Mattson that people walking through to an adjacent property is really not a burden that the property owner should have. I don't think those are things that factor into saying that this is not meeting that criteria. It really comes down to the ability to connect all of the whole structure that they're proposing here, which is substantial, in a fully pedestrian-oriented way, and this ATM/drive-through is preventing that.
Any other comments? Okay, a yes vote denies the request, and there will not be a drive-through. Mr. Neese?
Yes.
Mr. Mantle?
Yes.
Ms. Margison?
Yes.
Mr. Rayam?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
No.
And the chair votes yes. So you are not approved this evening. Okay. Can we break for the night?
It's only 8:15.
Everybody settle in, it's going to be a long time. B, the request of Tyler Garzo, owner for property located at 62 McKinley Road, whereas relief is needed to construct a detached accessory dwelling unit, which requires the following. 1, variance from section 10.1114.31 to allow a second driveway where only one is permitted. Said property is located on Assessor Map 268, Lot 26, and lies within the Single Residence B district. Is there anyone to speak to this?
Good evening, Madam Chair. Tyler Garzo, Garzo, from 62 McKinley. There it is.
Yeah.
Announcement now? Okay, I'm just going
Do
to.
you need to reconsider Fisher
A
first?
note from the planning board suggests, or, sorry, the planning department, asks us to consider whether we want to invoke Fisher v. Dover on this request. And that's what I'm asking you now. Mr. Neese.
I'll make some comments.
Please.
If I could. It's my opinion that Fisher v. Dover does not apply to this request. The previous request was to split the lot in two. If you remember part of our discussion during that, one of the questions that the board asked was why not a detached accessory dwelling unit? It could be argued that by the applicant that he is basically trying to rectify his situation by doing exactly what we suggested. And that's why I don't think Fisher v. Dover applies, and we should consider his application.
Any other input? No, I tend to agree with you completely. Okay, so then, you may go ahead.
Thank you. I am indeed trying to do exactly as you suggested.
Listen to us.
Yeah, I'm trying very hard.
Well, we shouldn't let that happen.
So per the recommendation of the board, I've gone in the direction of a detached accessory dwelling unit instead of subdivision. As you know, the state now allows ADUs by right, so this variance request is just for a second driveway to serve that detached accessory dwelling unit. The packet provides a conceptual design of the detached accessory dwelling only. The planning board, I believe, is workshopping ADU ordinance next week, so I'm monitoring to see how that goes. There are some very interesting questions regarding square footage that the state poses to local planning boards. So during my last presentation on August 19th, you approved something very similar at 2 Sylvester Street. So I have unabashedly borrowed from that discussion. The variance is not contrary to the public interest, and the spirit of the ordinance is now that we promote accessory dwelling units, and this driveway is a necessary part of allowing that to happen. Therefore, the spirit of the ordinance will be observed. Substantial justice is done. There's no loss to the general public by allowing this driveway to go into place. Values of the neighboring properties will not be diminished. The neighboring property has 2 driveway entrances. To the south, 231 Coolidge has a 22-foot wide driveway. 47 McKinley across the street to the northwest has a 23-foot wide driveway. And the noted objector at 260 Coolidge widened her driveway during 2021 construction without a driveway permit. Apparently, it's not out of character with this neighborhood to do driveways. Literal enforcement, unnecessary hardship. The special condition distinguishing this from other properties is that we have an accessory dwelling unit by right on a corner property, and that is the condition that lends itself to the need for this variance in order to make use of that accessory dwelling unit. Also reducing the number and amount of entrances on McKinley, the existing driveway location, and a neighborhood connector to Dondero School is valuable and reasonable for safety. In closing, at my last time with the board, Mr. Mantle, Mr. Rayum, and no longer present Mr. Rossi, all offered very explicit encouragement of the detached accessory dwelling unit approach. A driveway is a necessary part of that approach. I have followed your advice, and I hope for your approval of this request. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, I think I've got two. Do you have a time frame when you're planning to build the DADU, the accessory dwelling unit?
A local builder that I've been working with, we're ready to roll. If the planning board doesn't do anything with regard to offering more square footage, we'd like to do something similar to what I tried to mock up. We're not using an architect. He's very experienced, and this is just a standard rectangular Cape Cod in character with the neighborhood and the existing dwelling.
And my second question is just, one of the alternatives might have been a driveway between the two proposed buildings that comes off Coolidge, so you'd only have one. You probably considered that. I'm just curious why you rejected that. Was there anything that prevented that from being done?
I think putting it next to the fence helps obscure parked cars a little bit, makes it more pleasant for everybody. And also my very friendly neighbor across the street who said, we do not object, which was a very nice thing to say in this context, would have a driveway directly across from between those two, the concept and the existing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
I've got a question for staff. Jillian, does our ADU ordinances allow for a different address to a detached ADU from the primary structure?
Yeah, I believe so. The fire department will assign an address as part of the building permit process. So it could have a different address.
Because one of the requirements in ADU is that the person has to live there.
True.
So,
That wouldn't affect.
well, I mean,
I don't,
I just want to know if it's in the ordinance where, the house can be on McKinley and the ADU can be on a different road.
It's on the same property.
Well, I understand that. It's a different address. It was just a
guess that
question.
yeah, be up
That
to
would
the
matter.
fire
Okay.
department.
Okay,
Yeah,
just,
Not something we can,
I could just offer, from my experience, it's technically the same address, but you can call it A or B or number 1, number 2, whatever.
Yeah.
And you can do separate electric meters, but not separate water and sewer.
okay, thank you.
Speaking from
How do you know
experience.
that?
That's very interesting.
I did it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
We're very happy about the sewer. It actually runs across, and you can see it on the architecturals, so we'll get to do combined sewer very easily here.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Anyone in favor? Anyone in the public who would like to speak in opposition? Anyone to, for, or against? Okay. Yes? No. Okay, then the public hearing is closed. I do want to remind you that there is a letter in your packet about this. Yes, Mr. Ram?
Madam Chair, I would move to approve the applicant's request as presented and advertised.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Neese.
Okay. So, beyond encouraging the accessory dwelling unit, it was really more recognizing that it is a tool in the toolbox that, the applicant could potentially have taken advantage of. And it is something that is allowed, regardless of its specific orientation on the property. All of that gets worked through how the how the ordinance is written. There's nothing here that we are being asked to provide any kind of variance or special exception for with regards to the detached ADU itself. This really comes down to, creating the second driveway. I think, many of the things that kind of drove the thinking that splitting the property into two would be a problem are things that are also kind of driving the solution of a second driveway, especially the fact that the applicant is burdened by two 30-foot front yards, right? So one along the McKinley Road portion of the property and one along the Coolidge Drive portion of the property. It's really pushing the accessory dwelling unit back away from the property line and really makes using the existing driveway access more problematic. You kind of have to go around the existing garage, how you would, that would be like a long way to back out of, or, there's just not going to be room back there to kind of create a turning lane or anything along those lines, as the applicant kind of indicated in the written presentation. So it really is, it is burdensome to say that the applicant should use the only existing driveway on McKinley. Additionally, being on both streets here does give sort of the sense, really, we don't want, driveways like right next to each other. These are really spread out over the, the full length of the front of the property from one side to the other. The applicant mentioned the Sylvester Street case that we also recently approved, that kind of the same thing, right? It was a long, very long lot that went along a great distance. Kind of the same thing here, but in fact, an even bit more of a difference is that it's on two separate streets. It's at 90 degrees to each other. Really is in keeping with the spirit of the ordinance that says, hey, we just don't want, driveway after driveway after driveway. So I think with that, just going through the criteria, granting the variance would not be contrary to public interest. Granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance. It's really trying to say is this, and basically in keeping with what we're looking for, and as I indicated, the two separate driveways here, I think they won't be, right next to each other. They're going to be in extreme ends of the property. They're going to be pointing in different directions at 90 degrees to each other. Meeting the overall feel and look of the neighborhood won't feel awkward as a result. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. Again, is there something from the general public purposes for this that would say that creating the second driveway would be unacceptable? As Ms. Neese asked, could you split the baby and put just your one driveway right in the middle? I think that there's actually some general public purposes that says that's a bad idea. One is, as the applicant has pointed out, there's a driveway directly across the street. Second is it brings it that much closer to sort of a very rounded corner between the two drives. There is a public interest in not having driveways too close to a corner that causes traffic issues. So keeping the existing driveway where it is and then allowing the new proposed driveway at the far end of the property really does make sense. And, and that balancing test is really, I think, in the applicant's favor. Granting the variance would not diminish the values of surrounding properties. Again, this is just a driveway. It is along the side of the property, but it is fully allowed there. It's not a raised structure of any sort. Is supporting structures that are fully within the buildable envelope of the property, so I don't see any impact to surrounding property values. And then the hardship criteria. So again, what is different about this property that says that we should not apply the zoning in a strict manner? And again, I do believe that the fact that this is a corner lot, it's sort of long but relatively narrow from the McKinley Road perspective, really lends to say, yeah, it's got a couple of those unique characteristics, with especially being burdened by a second 30-foot secondary front yard, which is pushing the DADU that is allowed by right back farther away from the road, and makes using the existing driveway essentially completely impractical to say that would be a plausible solution for solving the access problem to the DADU. So, and it is an allowed use for the property. So with that, I recommend approval.
Does the second have anything to add?
The only thing I'd like to add is I'd like to address one of the public comments we received on this, and that's the concern that down the road that these would be split into two residences. I think at present, according to our ADU rules, that's not allowed, so I don't see that as a real concern, at least under existing regulations.
Thank you.
And I meant to address that as well. Right. The applicant came before us, was denied. The zoning ordinance, as it's currently constructed, would not allow it to be split into two. In the distant future, could the zoning ordinance change in such a way that that might be possible? True, but there'd be many other properties within the area that would likely be similarly affected. So it's not something that is unique about this particular property.
Okay. And a yes allows a second driveway. Mr. Neese?
Yes.
Mr. Mantle?
Yes.
Ms. Margerson?
Yes.
Mr. Rayam?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you for seeing us this evening. The next item of business, Mr. Rayam is recusing himself on this application. It is item C under new business, the request of ZJBV Properties LLC owner, and Jason, forgive me, Mike Michalik, you'll tell me when you get up here, for property located at 180 Islington Street, whereas relief is needed to establish a personal service use for a tattoo studio, which requires the following. 1, special exception from section 10.440, use number 7.20, to allow a personal service use. Said property is located on Assessor Map 137, Lot 19, and lies within the Character District 4-L2 and Historic District. Is there anyone to speak to this petition?
With 5 people, he has the option.
Oh, yes, thank you for reminding me. Okay. When there are,
Thank you for hearing my application.
excuse me, just a second, I want to take care of just something you should know.
Okay.
In order to have approval from this board, you need 4 votes. Not majority, but 4 votes.
Okay.
And when only 5 people are voting, we allow the applicant to decide whether or not they want to take this chance, or to come back when we will have more people. But because of the recusal, we are down to 5 this evening. This is not indicating that I know anything that you don't. I'm just giving you the choice.
Okay. Can I ask what was the reason for him recusing himself?
We never know what the reason for the recusal is.
It's often proximity to.
It's often just because you get an abutters notice.
So, what do you suggest I do?
What do I think you should do?
Yeah.
I really.
Worst case scenario? If
The worst case scenario is that you get denied and you can't come back again because it would be the same request twice. The best case scenario is that everyone loves your proposal and you go through.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
And I can't, yeah. We could suspend the rules and move you and give you a little time to think about this if you would like.
Till when? Next month?
No, to just later this meeting. But no, you are allowed to move. You may say, I do not want to be.
Right, I understand
I want
that.
to, postpone.
Yeah. Would he be recusing himself next month as well?
Yes, but.
So would I be in the same situation?
Potentially, there's another board member.
Yeah, we're down to 5 because of the recusal, and one of our members is absent.
Yeah.
So it's unlikely, and even if Mr. Rayam recuses again, as he will, that we would be down a member. If it's next month, I wouldn't bet on January.
I guess, yeah, push it back. Push it back to next
You'd like
month.
to do that?
I guess so.
Okay.
It's not it was a personal service zoning before.
know.
So it's just.
And
it's a
if I
simple
were
request, there's
allowed
no-
to say anything to you, I would, but I cannot.
Yeah. All right, yeah, we'll push it back a month.
Okay. Sorry.
That's okay.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
So that's postponed till November?
Yes.
Just state that it's postponed to the November.
And so this proposal has been proposed to our November meeting. So next on the agenda, when we will have 6 people again voting, is the request of Christopher J., and Rachel A. Delisle, owners for property located at 250 McKinley Road, whereas relief is needed to construct a second-story addition to the primary structure, which requires the following. 1. Variance from section 10.521 to allow A, 23-foot front yard where 30 feet are required. B, 0-foot right side yard where 10 feet is required. And 2, variance from section 10.321 to allow a nonconforming building or structure to be extended, reconstructed, or enlarged without conforming to the requirements of the ordinance. Said property is located on Assessor Map 250, Lot 117, and lies within the Single Residence B District. Is there anyone to speak to this proposal?
Hi, my name is Chris Delisle, and the property owner of 50 McKinley Road.
But he was in high school with me.
I did. I'm here with Justin Luce, my build partner with Chasco, and on the phone is Charles Hoyt, who did our design. I've been in this home for 10 years with my family. I have growing daughters who will soon be teenagers, and as our family grows and ages, so does the demand for hot water and showers, which is how this project is predicated on the need for more space as the family ages and another facility to shower in. I've lived in Portsmouth for 41 years. I'm raising the 4th generation of Portsmouth natives, and we're asking for approval for a partial second-story addition to add 2 bedrooms and a bathroom to our home. That does not further encroach on any of the setbacks of our property, so we're trying to fit within existing condition. The overall design, the intention, as you can see, is modest in the sense that we're trying to maintain very similar architectural feel to what we have today. We have a gable in the front and a lot of roof showing. We're trying to maintain fitting within the neighborhood with our neighbors. You'll notice on the west side of our home, which is on the right if you're facing it, that we currently have about 2.5 feet as the Map Geo rendering shows. When you put our window wells in from our basement, we did some renovation in the basement to get more space. It's essentially a 0-foot setback. So you'll notice a letter of support from our neighbors, the Smiths, who are on that side. This is on their garage side of their home where that encroachment is. The front of the property is a little over 20 feet from the line. Any notable change there is we are going to remove a bow window. It's a de minimis return that you get, but it's a little more distance to the street as a result. And with this addition, we also intend to install energy efficient heat pumps and AC, which will require the installation of a compressor. And we're proposing that we do that on the right side of the home, where that setback is currently essentially 0, within the same envelope as those basement window wells. And the intent of that location is, one, it's the furthest we can get away from the wetland, but we're also very close to the electric service at that point, and it's also not near anybody's sleeping position in the home. So we're trying to keep it, located away from a disturbance for us or for our neighbors. And lastly, it's not relevant to the request for what we're doing for the setbacks, but we are removing a 3-season porch and a deck, which kind of puts us right at the limit of lot coverage anyway. We're replacing those with a much smaller footprint of decks, which we're going to work with the Conservation Commission for conditional use to do that work there. We've done some extensive renovations in that yard over the years using conditional use to work within the wetlands. We respect the wetlands, which is another reason why we chose this project to go up instead of out, because any out would have brought us further or closer to the wetlands where we want to try to avoid. In terms of the criteria, with the public interest, quite a few homes in Ellen Park have a second story. There's actually one right across the street currently being constructed. And our addition is intentionally designed to maintain that similar roof and gable appearance and that current facade that fits the character of our surrounding homes, and will not extend beyond those current setbacks to our neighbors or the roadway. In terms of the spirit of the ordinance being observed, we're going to maintain those current setbacks, and we've made a lot of effort to improve the square footage to only what is necessary to afford that extra living space for the family without putting a huge box on top of a box. And no additional encroachment will be beyond the presented scope, such as that AC condenser is going to be within that envelope of our window wells. In terms of substantial justice, showering aside, as I mentioned, we've been in Portsmouth for a very long time. I've been here my whole life. And the addition is going to allow us that more space and the additional bathroom, and enable my spouse and I to age in place in this home, maintaining first floor living. It's the most economical for us. We bought this home 10 years ago when homes were less expensive and rates were less expensive. So we certainly economically would benefit from doing this work as opposed to purchasing a larger home in Portsmouth. We want to stay here. In terms of surrounding properties not being diminished, efforts have been made to increase the square footage of this home, trying to keep it as modest and as within character as possible without significantly altering the external appearance of the home. But also we'll be updating everything. We're going to get new siding, new windows, freshen up the landscaping, so it's going to fit within the character of the neighborhood. And I think that would probably improve value more than it would diminish. And then lastly, the unnecessary hardship. It's currently a non-conforming home, as are most homes in Ellen Park. Any alterations that we would need to make to bring it into conformance would be doing quite a bit of soil disturbance within the wetland buffer. We'd have to remove foundation. And there's no other direction that we can go on this home besides up if we were going to get that more space. And that is all I had. I thank you all for your consideration of the application.
Okay. Are there questions? Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm interested in your photo that you have. It's on page 106 of our packet. There's no particular number for your presentation, but you have a photo here of the right side of your property with a yellow line. I don't know if that's actually something that is something physical on the ground or something you created virtually, but certainly that line would appear to be far more than 0 feet away from your window wells or side of your house. What is that line and what is it based on?
So that line, the prior homeowner had done a survey. We found the stakes in the ground. And when you run a line from the front stake to the back of the property, it's actually not 0 as it's depicted on the map geosite. Mm-hmm. But the reality is it's not 10 either. So whether it's 7 or 0, we're going to be here anyway. So that's what my neighbors and I have been using as our demarcation line between our properties to mow. And
okay, but you have never had a survey done on your property for yourself?
I have not had one for myself, no.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I do think there is somewhat of a distinction, just that, 0 feet is very, very, you're right there. Plus then, especially adding on a second story, your ability to maintain that second story without having to maintain it off your neighbor's property always causes some concerns. So I'm just curious, do you have any idea what that dimension is? Did you take a measurement out to where that mythical yellow line is located?
So it's about 10 feet, a little bit less.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, my impression is that's about what you're actually looking at. And Map Geo, as with any tax map, is notoriously unreliable. Only a survey can really give you, accurate information about setbacks and whatnot. Thank you.
I guess building on that, the stakes that were already there, even though you didn't have surveyed, are those official surveying stakes or are they not? Yeah, they are. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone to speak in opposition to this petition? Anyone to speak to, for, or against? Okay, then the public hearing is closed. And again, we do in our packets have some letters from the neighbors. Okay, what would we like to do? Yes, Mr. Ram.
Madam Chair, I'd move to approve as presented and advertised. And in a belt and suspenders kind of way, I would like to just add a stipulation that the right side facade of the addition aligns with the current right side foundation line. And just adding that in because I really don't think we're approving 0 feet. I think we're approving something else. And I think that actually more reflects what that something else is. And down the road won't allow somebody to think, oh, I can go like right up to the property line. That's not the intent of, I think, what I would be approving tonight and what I would suspect the board would maybe support.
Is there a second for Mr. Ram? Okay.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mm-hmm.
Just going straight to our criteria. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. Granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance. So the applicant is asking for 2 setbacks for, well, first of all, we're seeing in the city, people that might have once upon a time moved to a bigger property when their family started growing. That's just simply not as much of a realistic option anymore. The inventory is low. What is available tends to be expensive. It's just very difficult to find opportunities to grow into your next house. We won't go into how that's cascading down the whole length of the ability of people to buy houses. But so it's not surprising that the applicant is looking to expand on their current home. I do think that the expansion is being proposed, so they are sort of decreasing some of the light and air, which is what. There's 2 big things that we're concerned about. One is light and air on neighboring properties. The other is maintainability. Right now, we're going up taller. Is the applicant going to be able to maintain it as easily as they would for a single story? I think both the cases here, the applicant's proposal is really, it's a second story, but it's a relatively modest second story. It's got a full dormer in the back, but it has just sort of a couple of smaller dormers to the front. The overall roof line, it's almost more of a story and a half, really, than a true second story. It's not like they're building like a really tall addition here. So I think the application as presented is modest, and as a result, the encroachment both on the front yard and on this right side yard, which again we are advertised at 0 feet, I think is actually something greater than that, and the stipulation will help to resolve that. Hey, we're keeping the status quo. We're just adding a second story to it. I think, it's basically going to be essentially in the characteristics of the neighborhood. Literally, most of the homes are, single story, but there are some exceptions. And again, the overall feel isn't going to be a mansion. It's going to feel like a modest expansion to a single story house. Granting the variance to do substantial justice. Again, what are the general public purposes of the ordinance that we would have that outweigh the applicant's desire to make more full use of their home? I think that balancing test falls in favor of the applicant. There's really nothing here, again, light and air wise, where they are being overly burdensome on the general public purposes and even on the adjoining neighbor. They have the adjoining neighbor's consent. They have, that side is their garage side. They'll be adding 1 window, but again, it's sort of some distance away from the living quarters for the abutting property. And granting the variance would not diminish the values of surrounding properties. Again, this is, an overall improvement to the property, as the applicant has indicated. They're making some other general improvements as well. Will likely increase property values, not decrease them. Don't see any concern there. And then what is unique about this property? I think the fact that the existing home, on this property is kind of shoved to one side. That was not atypical, as the applicant has kind of indicated. In this neighborhood, that's kind of the way that the homes were built. Additionally, the applicant kind of needs to go up on the right side yard side. The opposite side is where the garage is. It doesn't really make it conducive to, say, somehow shift this over more towards the center of the property and away from the lot line on the right side. It makes sense to build up over the existing residential portion of the property, not the garage portion of the property. So I really do think that is something that's unique about this relative to the zone as a whole, that says that the applicant deserves relief from the requirements, and the application is reasonable in the sense that it is sort of adding on to an existing residential use which is allowed in this zone. So with that, I recommend approval.
Does the second have anything to add?
Nope.
Mr. Neese?
Yeah, just one thing to add. I think that the applicant, much of this lot, if not all of this lot, lies within the 100-foot wetland buffer. So really adding on to the back is not an option. The only way to go is up. Otherwise, he'd run into all sorts of issues with affecting the wetlands buffer.
I agree. Okay, if there's no more discussion, we will vote. Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
Mr. Rayam?
Yes.
Ms. Margerson?
Yes.
Mr. Mannel?
Yes.
Mr. Neese?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. You are approved, Crystal. He was in school with my daughter.
Would it be possible for us to take a break before the last 2
Yes.
applications?
I
Sorry,
think-
Attorney Durbin does tend to be thorough, but we could.
If that is the wish, we will do that. We will take a 7-minute break. Okay, so we are back. The zoning board meeting for October 28th, 2025 is back in session. And we are ready to hear item, tell me where we, D. I crossed it out already. Yes, hi.
Hi.
Welcome. The request of Christopher J. and, E. Who told me D? The request of, is it Newchow? Hartzell Family Trust for property located at 204 Aldrich Road, whereas relief is needed to construct an addition and ramp to the primary structure, which requires the following. 1, variance from section 10.521 to allow A, 3-foot right side yard where 10 is required. B, 7-foot left side yard where 10 feet is required. C, 31% lot coverage where 20% is the maximum allowed. And 2, variance from section 10.321 to allow a non-conforming building or structure to be extended, reconstructed, or enlarged without conforming to the requirements of the ordinance. Said property is located on Assessor Map 153, Lot 26, and lies within the single residence B district. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the record, Derek Durbin. I'm here on behalf of the owners and applicants, Emily Hartzell, who's here as well tonight. Leslie Nutchow should be on Zoom, I believe, but if she's not, she's here with us, at least in spirit tonight. I also have Chuck Hugo with me as well, that he's the designer for the project. So the property at 204 Aldrich Road is a pretty small parcel of land, as you'll see on the exhibits that I put with my written narrative. It's 5,703 square feet. Has a relatively small house on it that was built in approximately 1928. It has 3 beds and 1.5 baths in it. The property was created as part of the I think it was Westfield Park subdivision of 1927. That subdivision plan, there's a couple different plans that have been recorded with it, is kind of, it's basically that whole area over there by Hannaford's. It shows all those neighborhoods, Sewell, Baxter, all those streets. And one thing you'll notice about that subdivision plan is that all the lots, I believe, are under 15,000 square feet in size. I think, at least with the plan that shows Aldrich Road, I believe all the lots are, or at least almost all the lots, are under 10,000 square feet in size. So obviously, current zoning wasn't contemplated at the time that this property was created. Aside from only having 38% of the lot area required by SRB zoning, this property only has half the required frontage as well, at 50 feet. A portion of the existing house encroaches into the front and right yard setbacks, and the existing shed on the property encroaches into the right yard setback as well. As I pointed out in my written narrative, the house does suffer from a significant degree of functional and physical obsolescence, which I guess can be expected with a house of this age that it doesn't look like it's probably undergone any type of major renovation in quite a few years. In addition, and probably more importantly to this application, most of the rooms in the house are not ADA accessible and wouldn't be able to accommodate a person with a physical disability that utilizes an assistive device like a walker or a wheelchair. Unfortunately, Leslie has been diagnosed with and suffers from chronic medical conditions, which now limit her ability to safely navigate stairs and will soon require daily use of assistive devices. I did include Exhibit A with my narrative, which is a letter from her healthcare provider who's determined that it is medically necessary for her to reside in a one-story living arrangement, which the existing home does not allow for. As such, the applicants are proposing an 837 square foot, one-level addition to the rear of the house that would serve as Leslie's sole living area moving forward. The first floor would also be reconfigured to accommodate more of an open concept living arrangement, as well as an expanded living family area. The addition would have its own entrance, mudroom, full bathroom, bedroom, small office and laundry area, all of which would obviously be designed to be ADA accessible. In addition, as shown on the plans, the applicants have reserved an area for a wheelchair ramp within the right yard setback. The only thing I would point out related to that is that we did request a variance for that, but it's expected to be 18 inches or lower above grade, unless, of course, railings are required for it, and then it could be slightly above. So we included that request out of an abundance of caution. So we wouldn't have to come back at a later date should the other variances be approved tonight. To make way for the addition, the applicants will be removing the existing shed and relocating the bulkhead to the left side of the home, as you'll see on the plan. The property is already at that 20% coverage threshold. It's actually just a small fraction over. So any additional coverage on the property does necessitate building coverage relief at this point. Unless there are questions at this point, I just turn to the variance criteria and go through it.
Are there questions? No. Okay, go.
Granting the variances will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the zoning ordinance or the public interest. The primary purpose of the building coverage requirement is to protect against the overcrowding of structures on land. Setback requirements is to preserve light, air, and space between structures on abutting properties. A 10.8% increase in building coverage over what's permitted by the ordinance probably seems like a lot at first blush, but it really isn't when you consider the diminutive size of the lot, the character of the neighborhood, as well as the purpose behind the request. SRB zoning standards, as I pointed out in my introduction, do not really reflect the existing character of the Aldrich Road neighborhood, where most of the properties have half or less of the required lot area and have houses or other accessory structures that encroach into the setbacks. In that respect, the ordinance does create a unique burden on these properties, but particularly the applicant's property, which is smaller, as you'll notice, than most of the other properties on Aldrich Road, with the exception of a couple immediately surrounding it. So any reasonably sized addition to the existing house does require building coverage relief, given the lot size. We feel that the proposed floor plan is a reasonable one that does contain minimal amenities in the context of why it's being proposed, which is to accommodate that first floor ADA accessible living. Much of the open space associated with the property will be preserved, as you'll notice, with the addition. The only areas outside the addition that would be impervious are the driveway, front walk, and of course the proposed ramp in the future. There really isn't a feasible way to construct the bulkhead or ramp without encroaching into those setbacks, given the narrow width of the lot. And to put it in perspective, the existing house is approximately 28 feet wide. You've got a 50-foot wide lot, so kind of hard to fit anything on the sides. The bulkhead and ramp will have minimal impact upon the light, air, and space of abutting properties. So for these reasons, I believe that the public interest is not negatively affected, and that this is consistent with the spirit and character of the neighborhood in which it's proposed. Substantial justice will be done in granting the variances. It would represent a pretty significant loss to the applicants for the board to deny the variances for what is, I believe, a fairly modest request despite the level of relief that's being sought for coverage. There would be no public interest conversely served by denying the variance relief. To the contrary, I believe there is a public interest served by allowing reasonable accommodations to people with recognized physical limitations so that they can age in place. It would constitute an injustice to deny the variances. Surrounding property values will not be diminished by granting the variances. The owners of the properties that are most directly impacted by the variances that are being requested to the left, to the right, and to the rear have submitted letters of support. I know they're not in the public comment, but they were attached as exhibits to my written narrative, exhibits B, 1, 2, and 3. Regardless of the support by the neighbors, I would argue that the addition is only 1 story in height, will comply with the setbacks itself, and will be situated a considerable distance from the nearest structures on abutting properties. So therefore, it should not have any tangible impact upon their light, air, and space or anything else that would affect their values. Finally, literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. I believe the size and width of the property are special conditions that distinguish it from the properties that surround it. Again, it was created long before SRB zoning standards were in place, and it is in its original configuration from when that 1927 Westfield Park subdivision plan was created and recorded. As demonstrated by Exhibit D in my narrative, it is smaller than most of the surrounding properties, which we averaged out at 9,119 square feet in size. And to put it in perspective, on a lot that is that size, we would be at 19.3% building coverage. If it were a compliant lot, we'd be at 11.8%. In addition, the property is only 50 feet wide. Existing home is 28 feet in width, so almost any expansion to that footprint necessitates setback relief. So when considering these special conditions, I would submit to the board that there is no fair and substantial relationship between the general purpose of the ordinance provisions, building coverage, setback relief, and the relationship to the property. Finally, the proposed use is reasonable, continue to be used for single-family residential purposes with an ADA component to it, which is a use that is permitted by right in the SRP zoning district. I also set forth in my written narrative, and I don't want to just read it back, so I'll just reference it. The alternative variance criteria set forth in RSA 674:33.5, which is aimed at providing an alternative unnecessary hardship test for those that need reasonable accommodations for their living. And in this case, I believe that test is also met here, which the test is really is the variance in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance, and I just incorporate the comments I've already made in that respect. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Chuck's also happy to answer any questions about design.
Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Ram?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So question that maybe the staff, I'll ask you, but maybe the staff can provide some forceful backup as well. I don't know if it was discussed at all, but paragraph or 10.323 of our ordinance talks about, notwithstanding the preceding paragraphs, the following modifications to a lawful nonconforming building or structure may enlarge or expand the nonconformity, provided that the modification is the minimum necessary to comply with the applicable code. One of the 10.32310 is installation or replacement of components required for egress purposes pursuant to the building code. And it seems to me at one point in time that paragraph was even more explicit, that egress needed for, just disability purposes was exempt. And it doesn't completely get you out of having to come before this board, but it would eliminate one of the two setbacks. Was there any discussion about that between yourself and planning staff, and why was that not considered?
Yeah, no, I don't believe there were some discussions that were held before I got involved. I would defer to Emily if she might remember and just, if you speak, just come up and state your name for the record. And yeah, if you remember anything from that discussion.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Emily.
Sorry, full name, excuse me, we need your full name and
I'm
address.
sorry. I'm Emily Hartzell,
Okay.
one of the owners of the property. Yeah. I spoke with Stephanie just briefly, but not.
About the egress?
No, not
Okay.
about the egress.
It was about interior door.
It was very general, just sort of the protocol of how things went. And at that point, we decided it would be advisable to get your assistance.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so I don't have anything to add to this particular discussion.
Okay, yeah, I remembered that maybe it was Leslie mentioning to me that there was some discussion about ingress or egress, but I don't remember, the specifics of which.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious because it's one of the part of
Yeah.
the relief you're asking for is something that I'm not entirely sure. At least seems to me at one point in time our zoning ordinance was more proactive about saying this was something that didn't require relief.
I know, yeah.
And then, your other setback relief is a bulkhead. Clearly, you'll still be before us for the total lot coverage, that's something you can't get out of, but.
Yeah, no, I know, and I honestly don't know the answer to that. But we felt like better to apply for everything, I mean, which is honestly the purpose behind reserving the area for the wheelchair ramp and asking for a setback variance, even though it may not be necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone who would like to speak in opposition to the petition? Anyone who would like to speak to, for, or against? Okay. Public hearing is closed. Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance as advertised and presented.
Is there a second? That was you not
That's a
pointing.
second.
Okay.
Okay, so going through the criteria, we'll take the first two together. The variance is not contrary to the public interest, and the spirit of the ordinance is observed. And here, the proposed use of a continued single-family home with a small one-story addition off the rear does not conflict with the purpose of the ordinance or alter the essential character of the neighborhood or threaten public health, safety, or welfare. Again, light, air, and privacy will still be preserved with this modest addition towards the rear of the property. Substantial justice is done, and it's a balancing test between the benefit to the applicant not being outweighed by harm to the general public, and here there's a clear benefit to the applicant for their needs, and there's no harm to the general public. So substantial justice will be done. And then the next criteria is that the values of surrounding properties will not be diminished, and this new construction addition that is not really visible from the street, there's no reason to think that surrounding values would be diminished. And then finally, literal enforcement of the ordinance will result in unnecessary hardship. Here, the special conditions of the property mean that the purpose of the ordinance applied to this property, there's no fair and substantial relationship. Again, we're trying to preserve light, air, and privacy, and what's being proposed here is a modest one-story addition that's essentially to the rear with some egress to the side and a bulkhead. This lot is a narrow lot. It's half of what's supposed to be there. Total lot area is essentially a third of what it's supposed to be, driving the need for the building coverage, and then the narrowness means that the side yard setbacks are harder to achieve. And then the existing home is where it is, and the foundation, so it wouldn't make sense to be able, or you just wouldn't be able to put it anywhere else. And then finally, this single-family home continued proposed use is a reasonable one.
Does the second have anything to add?
He was very complete. Nothing to
Very
add. Thank
complete.
you.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, then we will vote. Mr. Neese?
Yes.
Mr. Mantle?
Yes.
Ms. Margison?
Yes.
Mr. Rayum?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, so you are all set. The next item of business, item F, the request of Trenton and Denise Sensiba, owners for property located at 0 and 12 Ruth Street, whereas relief is needed for a lot line adjustment, which requires the following. 1, variance from section 10.521 for 20.66 feet of frontage on map 143 lot 16 where 100 is required. Said map is located on Assessor Map 143 lot 16 and 9-1 and lies within the General Residence A district. Hello.
Good evening. My name is Marcia Brown, NH Brown Law, representing the applicants. And with me today is Denise Sensiba, in case I forget any facts that are pertinent to our discussion this evening. I do want to make a correction. On the listing, it says it is Lot 0. On the tax map, it's Lot 16. So I'm going to be referring to in my comments that it's Lot 16, because even though 12 Ruth Street is like the mailing address, that is Lot 9. Lot 16 does not have a mailing address. It is Lot 16. So I just wanted to make that point. And also make the point that there were, I believe, 3 neighbors that have sent in letters of support for your consideration.
Yes.
So before I...
We have received those.
Okay, thank you very much. Just a little bit of background before I get into the 5 factors. This is a existing legal non-conforming lot that has 0.66 feet of frontage, thanks to a 1971 deed where the city of Portsmouth accepted the road and left this lot with 0.66 frontage. In trying to, my counsel to the homeowners is, if you have access through a prescriptive easement, which is what they have right now, you have 2 owners, it would be better to do a lot line adjustment so you can achieve fee simple ownership of access, which requires expanding that frontage to 20.66, oh, I'm sorry, 20.66 feet, which will take it out of legal non-conforming. So while we are asking for a variance, that variance granting will get it back into legal non-conforming. So I just wanted to make that point, that it is legal non-conforming right now, but with a really minor amount of frontage, and the intention of this variance is to increase the frontage and increase the compliance with Ordinance Section 10.521. So I would like to then start with the 5 factors not contrary to the public interest. With respect to that, the frontage requirements exist to ensure safe access, orderly development, and preservation of the neighborhood character. And this variance will continue to advance those goals by increasing the frontage, providing clear ownership for the access, and making the lot more compliant. It will preserve the neighborhood character because this is a residential lot. That use is not going to change. The lot line adjustment will not change the character of the neighborhood. Zoned as GRA, it's still going to stay zoned as GRA. And for these basic reasons, we're asking for this board to find that this criteria is met. With respect to the spirit of the ordinance is observed, the spirit of the 100-foot frontage for the now present frontage requirements, that is to ensure that the lot has adequate frontage along a public street for safe access and compatibility with surrounding properties. The variance will advance these purposes by, again, increasing the frontage. Sorry that the same facts apply to each criteria, so I sound redundant. The lot will still preserve all of the zoning standards, including setbacks and lot area. As such, the variance will not present any the same kind of crowding concerns that a reduced frontage along a busier street would produce, because this is a dead-end street, and there are very few cars that come into this area. This is a dead-end street where there is one driveway and there's one prescriptive easement access for Lot 16. With respect to substantial justice will be done. Granting the variance will enable the applicants to obtain legal fee simple ownership for ingress and egress to this Lot 16, and therefore allowing the owners to achieve fee simple will affect substantial justice. If the variance is denied, the lot simply goes back, simply stays as a legal non-conforming lot with its 0.66 feet of frontage, but the access will be through a prescriptive easement instead of a fee simple. With respect to the surrounding property values, in the application, we noted examples where there have been other dead-end street non-conforming frontage lots, and it doesn't appear to be any diminishment of value because of that configuration. And that configuration would be similar to this butt end of Ruth Street. And so we don't believe that there are going to be any adverse impacts to any property values, because this is all staying as residential lots. It will just have a better situation where one driveway per lot, consistent with the rest of the character of the neighborhood, will be achieved. And in the application, the examples that we gave are 141 and 142 Mill Pond Way, where they have minimal frontage, and it doesn't look like there have been any diminished property values as a result of that configuration. And with respect to the last factor, will literal enforcement of the provision of the ordinance result in an unnecessary hardship? And that's because of the focuses on the configuration of the property. As I said, the city, in accepting not the full portion of the 1902 version of Ruth Street that went down to North Mill Pond, that gave this lot 16, which is now a merged lot of 3 50-foot frontage lots, that was not accepted. In 1971, only a portion of Ruth Street was accepted. Therefore, that section that had been offered by the developer reverted back to all the properties and left with the .66. And that history is important because when we're looking at whether the lot complies with section 10.310 non-conforming lots, it is section 10.312.20 that it complies with, because this was a 1902 plan. It has had a couple of planning board approvals to it, but that's the genesis of the legal non-conforming. The literal enforcement of the frontage requirement would create an unnecessary hardship due to the lot only having 0.66 feet of frontage right now. And I'm skipping over stuff that I've already said, so I apologize for the delay. Now, full application of the dimensional standards for the 100 feet frontage for lot 16 is not necessary to promote the valid public purpose of keeping the property zone in GRA and limited to residential use, and to provide for safe egress and passage on streets. And lot 16 will remain a reasonable use. It right now is a residential lot. It'll stay as a residential lot, so there's no impact on the use. It'll continue to be reasonable. In addition to the purpose of the ordinance being achieved with safe egress and ingress. We added 2 more examples of very tight ingress and egress at 0 Melbourne Street and at Mill Pond Way. Here, just to recap, the frontage is going from 0.66 to 20.66. So better in keeping with the ordinance, and because of it is a 0.66 frontage rate lot, it is impossible to meet the variance. But doing the best they can with grabbing land from 12 Ruth Street to lot 16 will improve its compliance. So with that, there are other diagrams in the packet showing that it is a dead-end street, showing the examples of where other lots have had a dead end and minimal frontage and values have not changed in those. If you have any questions, happy to take them. Thank you.
Ms. Murchison.
So, the intent is to convey the lot with the new expanded street frontage for purposes of residential building, correct?
Yes. Yep. With outside of the buffer. Mhm.
Okay. The problem is, though, is that the buffer is almost up to it comes all the way up to almost the front of the lot.
You don't have in this packet, because it is just the lot line and the frontage variance, but the homeowners do have a prepared plan showing the house, small house, up that is outside of the buffer.
Okay, so I'm just looking at 154 of our packet, which shows that the 100 tidal wetland buffer goes really quite far up into the property. So you're saying in that front corner?
Yep.
You're going to be building a house?
Yep.
Okay, and
meeting the setbacks.
I can see you have enough setbacks. It's just that the vast majority of this land is in the wetland buffer. So
Correct. They're working with that. Mhm.
they're working with the Conservation Commission and with the Planning Board?
That application, I don't believe has been filed yet, Denise? No, it hasn't been filed. They just sent us here first, the conditional use permit. Okay.
Can you repeat everything she just said into the mic, please, or have her come up?
Denise Sensiba, I'm the owner of the property. So we have filed a conditional use permit, but they have sent us here first. So it is attached to the land use permit, to the whole, it's online, but everything has been there, the wetland delineations, all the setbacks, everything is online. And yeah, to just confirm again, it's not in the wetland buffer zone according to wetland delineations. And it is applied for. We were just sent here first to just figure out the access, because we would like to own the property that rather than having an easement, simply because easements seem to work as long as you get along with your neighbors. The house 12 Roof Street is actually for sale as we speak, due to financial reasons as well. But overall, when people don't get along anymore, easements can cause a lot of trouble and a lot of hardship, and that is just something we can avoid. So we would love to rather own the access than having a second driveway or having parking on 12th Rue Street, because it's not necessary. It's possible. Luckily, we do own 12th Rue Street, and we can give the strip of land to the lot. So this is the preferred version that we're coming with in front of the board, because ultimately we believe, and a lot of people believe, that it's going to be the least complicated and just works the best for all for city. For example, to safe access for emergency vehicles, 20 feet will be wide enough for a fire truck and meet the codes. And again, easements, as long as you get along, they work great. But if you don't get along, it can turn into years of nightmare. Sorry, I keep rambling and rambling.
Yeah, I mean, easements are legal easements. They're enforceable in court. The issue is that by expanding the lot line, you're moving the access to the property within that wetland zone.
You mean the driveway?
Yes.
But
part of the conditional use permit
Is
has
that
improvements.
driveway.
There is right now a lot of street runoff from Ruth Street across the Sensibus property. And so the idea is to put in a very well draining gravel type system to kind of capture that, reduce the turbidity before it goes into Mill Pond. And so that structure is actually going to function as the driveway. And that will be in a part of the wetland buffer, partially, very partially, but the improvements, because of slowing down the water that's coming from the street, slowing down the water that's being pumped from the sump pump from the Lloyds, will be more processed. But
Also, there is technically enough room for a 10-foot driveway outside of the buffer zone entirely, even for the driveway, because no permanent structure will be in the wetland buffer zone. The house will be entirely out, but because of how it's curved, part of the permeable driveway would be in the wetland buffer zone. For that, we have mentioned it in a conditional use permit that we will then, when we meet with the wetland board, we will address that, what they would like to see from us. But it is technically possible. That is 10 feet. If we were to exactly do a 10-foot driveway, we would be entirely, even with the driveway, out of the wetland buffer zone. But we would like to have it a little wider. But if it really comes down to that, we're completely flexible. If the city would say, no, we absolutely do not want anything in the wetland buffer zone, not even a permeable patio or driveway, then we will address this with the wetland board when we get to the point and see what they would want from us. But it's possible to have a driveway completely out of the wetland buffer zone.
Do you have further questions?
But that might affect the variance that we're being requested, that you're requesting tonight. That may affect the variance relief. If the Conservation Commission decides that they want to put the driveway, the lot line adjustment, in a place that is outside of the wetlands, that may affect the variance request.
So there are no wetlands.
I mean, the wetland buffer.
Oh, okay, I'm so sorry, yeah.
They were told to come here first.
I think if they move the driveway other than where the lot access is going, they're going to have a decrease of value of lot 12 issue that will arise.
You were saying you wanted it all the way straight down? You would prefer that? Or
I think Jillian was going to say something.
I was just going to respond and say that, no matter where the driveway access is, it wouldn't affect what they're asking for tonight, which is to change the frontage with the lot line adjustment.
I thought the representation was that the driveway would be within the
It is.
lot line adjustment.
But we're not designing
It doesn't
the
matter
access.
tonight, that doesn't.
If I could
Mr.
just-
Neese.
okay.
Yes.
So I'm struggling a little bit. I'm moving away from the driveway issue, if that's
Yeah,
okay.
I think we're,
Okay. But I'm still focused on the stormwater issue. You make the comment that this lot line adjustment will make it easier for the city to deal with a property owner on handling drainage off of Ruth Street. I'm looking at your CUP application, and I'm trying to understand how it makes it easier, because it looks like the proposed work for the driveway and the stormwater retention area still is going to be on the property line between the two properties. And so the city's still going to have to deal with two property owners, it appears to me. Now, the only reason I bring this up is because you're using that partly as an argument for justifying the lot line adjustment. And it's not clear to me how this actually improves that situation.
I was going to say that the lot line adjustment was to try to keep, with the proposed bioretention basin that was in some of the materials, discussions with the city has not been, or engineering department has not been amenable to addressing it. So that bioretention component may not even go forward.
Okay.
So right now, it's a trespass. It's creating havoc on the sense of his property, having all of that drainage. But if the city doesn't want to address it, then the homeowner's just going to protect herself the best she can. But the lot line adjustment was to make it easier that if 12 Ruth Street is sold, that the bioretention would only be the city would only be negotiating with the Sensibas for that treatment section.
Yes, and if I may add on that, so as it is now, because we walked the property with Jillian, with Mr. McCourt, the city lawyer, and with our surveyor, and with, I think it was Eric from Public Works, and we kind of came to the conclusion that ultimately what we would want to how it was phrased, what we would want to put there as a rain garden is kind of up to us. And so space-wise, there is enough space to put the rain garden on just what I have proposed. Can I walk up there and touch it? Or I'm sorry, I've
Do
never.
not touch it.
You can walk up there
So,
and point to it.
if I may, though, the rainwater coming out of the bioretention area is still going to drain off across Lot 12.
Yeah, it will go though into an already existing freshwater wetland on 12, which is already kind of, as of right now, working as the streets water area that it takes care of. So it would basically run from the proposed permeable driveway, which will catch most of it, to the rain garden, to then into the freshland water. And if this is really something the city is concerned about, then as of right now, I do own 12 Ruth Street. I still can put in an easement technically for the city that the water would run into that freshwater. So that would not, I hope not be the make it or break it, because but it also will require talking to the city if they want to do something at all about it, because that is not in my hands. If the city decides, if the city lawyer decides this is not something that we're really worried about, it's been like this for a long time, then that is not really something that I can do anything about. All I can do is, on my end, there will be a permeable driveway, which will take care of some of the street water. It will then go into a rain garden, which also we will pay for and put in. So we're really, really doing a lot here to try to make the situation better. And from there, we don't know if there will be any more runoff or not. It was looked at by my civil engineers. What they designed was good enough for what's going on. But then again, this is kind of a little bit also on the city side, if they want to do anything about it or not. But this is what I can do. I can do the permeable driveway, I can do the rain garden, and if it really comes down to it, I could offer an easement right now, as I still own the land, onto the freshwater of 12 Ruth Street, and then it would be completely.
I'm just going to stop you there. I feel like, and this is something, if you will forgive me, board, and I may be wrong about this, but I thought we were being asked for this lot line mostly because you want the security of owning your egress, and you say it will make it easier in the future with the city and whomever.
Yes.
I am not sure that right now I need to consider what might come down the road.
Thank you, ma'am.
I feel like we're going very far afield here.
Thank you.
And I'm willing to be corrected. Apparently, I will be corrected. But I think, all right, yes, Mr. Ram.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a different tack, which, wetlands, I think we've got two great boards and commissions that deal with that. Drainage, I think we've got great city staff and another board that, again, deals with that. My concern is, what this board should be concerned with is the Lot 16 a buildable lot? And I don't think it's been made clear here that that's actually the intent of what's being asked for, because we keep talking about, driveways and just a little extra. Right now, Lot 16 is not a buildable lot, in my impression, and maybe city staff can provide some forceful backup on that. What you're really asking for us is to accept Lot 16 as a buildable lot with 20 feet of street frontage, because right now, you cannot put a house on Lot 16, at least under my impression, and staff or yourself could correct me on that.
Can I respond to that?
Please.
Because I would submit that a buildable lot, that is not relevant to, it's not important to what your decision is here, because even if she doesn't want, or if she is unable to put a house lot in there, she should be able to have the right of access if she wants to kayak, have a path, and use it as a waterfront access lot if she can't put a house there. So you still are faced with the simplicity of, it's a legal non-conforming lot right now. She's trying to expand the frontage to make it more compliant. If she can put a house on there, great. That process will run, but right now, because of the unique configuration of having a .66 frontage lot, in order to be more expansive or more compliant, she has to get herself out of legal noncompliance and then go back in, which is why we need the variance.
So again, and I guess I'm looking for what staff's interpretation is. To me, if we're asked to accept a lot with less than the minimum required frontage, we are in essence also then blessing that lot as a buildable lot.
No, not just a separate plot.
Not just right. So even at 20.66 feet, that is not a buildable lot. At 0.66 feet, it is not a buildable lot without a variance from this board. So I guess I'm trying to understand what the applicant is actually trying to accomplish here and what we are actually approving. Because if we are actually approving to say that with 20.66 feet, this suddenly becomes a buildable lot, that's a very different thing than saying, I want to just move my property line a little bit so that nobody gets mad at me over an easement. Those are two very different things in my mind.
I'm going to let Mr. Mattson.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I have also a slightly different view, and it's.
Well, I would appreciate then, could staff address what
Staff
they
has
think is
not
going
made a determination that this is a buildable or unbuildable lot at this point.
Okay, so, okay.
Let's get another view on this.
So it may be a question to you, but I guess it's more in general. I haven't seen the conditional use permit application because that's before another board, but I am curious. So the way I'm seeing this is, I guess just to start with, whether or not this is a buildable lot is an important decision, but that is not currently the decision. I understand if this is not granted, they could still proceed with that type of we would proceed then to whether or not it's buildable. It would just be the same situation, but instead of the lot realignment, it would just be an easement. But it's still the same, and this is the question about the conditional use permit, is it's the same location of the driveway as whether or not it's on which parcel, but it's the same spot. And so, I guess so that's the question. Is that true?
Yes.
That is correct.
Okay. So, so we're not deciding whether or not this is a buildable lot yet, but if we don't grant this, it's definitely not. Oh no, sorry, it's not, because we're not addressing that right now, because whether or not we grant this, there'll be a proposed driveway there through an easement or this lot line revision. So to me, that's the bigger consideration, is which of those two scenarios. So if we deny this, they can still try to propose building a house there, and when that plan comes before the boards, that would be considered. But if we granted I guess it doesn't affect the outcome of whether or not they're going to propose this being a buildable lot. It's the same driveway, same location. The question is whether it makes more sense to have this be through an easement or a conveyance of
It's an existing non-conforming lot.
I know that they cannot build a home here without a variance.
Right.
But they can put a driveway there whether they want, like, independent of our outcome. It's just whether or not it's on which piece of land.
I would like to move this along and have the petitioner finish up, and then we can discuss some more. Is that okay with everyone? Or did you want to ask?
Yeah, I guess that was my main question, is the same.
I just wanted to explain why I asked that question. I wasn't really wanting to get into the particulars of the wetland, but they are using the argument that this will substantial justice will be done in part because this will simplify things.
Right.
I didn't understand the argument that it would simplify things. That's why I was asking that question.
And I think it will simplify it because it's a matter of the security, that they can control it. And I think
No. There's a couple pieces on their substantial justice argument. One is that it will make it easier for the city to deal with
Oh, I know,
stormwater
right,
runoff,
right.
and that's what I didn't understand based on what was going on. So I just wanted to explain where I was coming from.
Okay.
So I do think, just point of order, we are asking questions. I don't know if we're supposed to be discussing this.
Okay.
May I just say one thing to you, Mr. Metzen?
I'm going to tell you at last that you actually can't stand and use the upper mic. No.
I'm sorry, my back's starting to hurt. Thank you. I don't know why I've been doing that. That is correct. So the hardship will be that we'll be forced with the easement when we could have it in fee as of now. But there would be an easement with a driveway rather than us owning it. And I mean, as a family, we love the neighborhood. We have a lot of neighbors that we have parties together. The kids go to school together. We are part of this neighborhood, and it would just be a hardship pushed on us to rely on an easement where we will not know the future neighbors. Again, the house is on the market. If they want to play along, that's fine, but our problem is going to start down the road with who is cutting what and access, and we do have a history a little bit on the street of a little bit of butting heads, so it is just the better outcome, but you are right, we might just be back for an easement, or it will be an easement. It's just to help us as a family own the property and to avoid conflict, and just own the land rather than relying on that.
Okay. Do you have anything else to say, Attorney Brown?
Only in response to any questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there more questions? All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to open it to the public then. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Now's your chance.
Hello. My name's Cynthia Keenan. I live at 61 Mill Pond Way. And my thinking around this mirrors what some people have said, but I definitely understand what has just gone back and forth. Becomes, when I read through it, it did become complicated, and it took a long time for me to be able to hone in on what was happening. And after reading through and looking at everything, including the house plans and everything, I really do think that what the board's being asked to do tonight, this board, with this variance, is very limited in scope. And yes, there could be, could this open the door to another step that's going to be ugly, that may be contentious? It very well might, but that's not what this is about. This is about this, having an easement versus letting them adjust the lot line. And because of that, I think it's important that the things I read through, all the ordinances, particularly about the sense of justice. I think that were this to be denied, I think there is an element of punishment or denial, like, I don't like what you're gonna do, so I'm not gonna let you do even what you're allowed to do, kind of thing. And I think we have to be careful getting into that as a city, and just follow the rules, follow along. They're requesting that they move the lot line so that they don't have to have an easement unless there's a real reason not to do that. I don't know, they've already provided plenty of examples that this is not a brand new thing. This is done. It seems like a way to shut something different down early. And I just don't think that's appropriate. If whatever is something different people have issues with, it'll be shut down if it's not appropriate. There are other boards that will shut it down, right? The Wetlands Committee will be all over them. I don't envy that. I spent the whole summer dealing with them just for a swimming pool, an above-ground swimming pool that was 3 feet over the 250 line. So they probably have many hills to climb. But I would encourage, I think the way we set up the system is so that things don't fall through the cracks. And I do think it's an injustice to start spreading out, well, what might this make easier? What might this make harder? What they're asking for tonight is pretty simple. And I'm in favor of that because I have no reason not to be. She owns both lots. right? I have an easement on my land, which I don't love because I don't even get it, really. It's with the city, and I'm not, like, am I allowed to put a place out there? I mean, why not have an easement if you have the opportunity to not have one? It's a complication, and if it's an unnecessary complication. I don't think that any plans she has after that are necessarily going to happen or not. It'll be a step-by-step thing, and she'll have to defend it the whole way, I imagine. So that's why I came down to support this proposal. I don't hear any reason other than bringing in future and separate problems. I haven't read any issue with why the variance shouldn't be given.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else to speak in favor?
Hello, my name is Braylon Hilsenbeck. I live at the adjacent property at 101A Mill Pond Way, and I'm here to just be an advocate for this proposal. You brought a great point, Madam Chair, is the big picture that we're focusing on, but over the last 4 years, I have had a second-story view over the cul-de-sac in question, and I have watched nothing but thoughtfulness, consideration of the domino effects be taken into consideration and upheld all the steps throughout. So I have no reason to believe that this would be any different. And I just wanted to say that not only has the character of the community been upheld, but it's been enriched. And having a bird's eye view where I have the immense pleasure to wave down at the families in that cul-de-sac, I have seen how these small steps build toward great things for the community. So I just wanted to be here to advocate and place my word in this space.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to speak in favor? Anyone to speak in opposition? Take turns.
If I may, can I give the board?
Yes.
I can pass them around. Thanks.
Good evening. My name's Primo Tosi, and I'm a lifelong resident of Portsmouth. I live at 2 Bruce Street, and my family's been down at 2 Bruce Street since 1968. My family built the first house on Bruce Street, number 2. My aunt and uncle built the second one, number 5. When we were building the first one, when we first went down there wasn't a road in there. The road was cut in when we went to build by Emerson McCourt. That road has always been flooded, potholes, washouts. There's 3 natural drains for that area. One is at the end of what is now Ruth Street, where they proposed to put that extension of the driveway in. That's one of the main waterways for that area. The second one runs behind my house, and the third one is on Mill Pond Way, right next to McEachran Park. That's why there's so much water, because it all runs to the mill pond. On the pamphlet I gave you, there were 2 things that I had questions on. I think they may have been addressed already, where they said on the page 1 that they restored, the planning board approved the plan, approved the, you got to excuse me, I have Parkinson's disease, so it makes it a little bit difficult to
Certainly.
speak. The deed to the Portsmouth Planning Board approved Lot 16, which formally recognized and restored the property as a separate buildable lot of record. It did not put it as a buildable lot, but it just said they approved the lot separation, and that was it. And it's listed on the second page I gave you, at the bottom of the page. The last sentence in there, the recording of this deed was approved by the City of Portsmouth Planning Board on November 17, 1988. No mention of it being a buildable lot. It shows on the survey plan, get into the survey plan, if you could pull up page 154 of the BOA packet. The survey that was recently done in 2025 shows that there's a .66 piece of frontage for lot 6 on Roof Street. I'm sorry, lot 16 on Roof Street. Well, it's funny that happened because there's no other document that shows that that lot has frontage on Roof Street. You go to any deed, and which I've included in there, and you read those deeds, the lot 16 deed states that the boundary line going from the southwestern part of the lot to the Roof Street ends at McCourt's property, ends at Roof Street. The lot on the other side comes from the deed that turned the road over to the city. That deed states that the road goes from a starting point up by Thornton Street, runs down 409.6 feet, and then turns a corner, goes 45 feet across the property of the Mitchells, which is house number 12. So nowhere does it mention that those lots have any frontage. At least I couldn't find anything other than a new survey that was done. With that said, if you look at the survey, the meets and bounds on that survey that they use to lay out the lot lines differs from any other of the deeds. The deed for lot 16 does not use the same meets and bounds that they show on the new survey. So I don't see how the survey was done. If you're supposed to use the deed, how was the survey done without following the deed? But the degrees that they use to measure are totally different than what's shown on the deed. Not only are they not the same as on lot 16, they're not the same for the title that turns the road over to the city. So that one is all off. It shows the property line between my house and the Zanzibars. That's not the same. So whoever did the survey used a whole different measuring degree to lay out those property lines. So it doesn't match anybody's deeds. So as far as the property that they want to extend the boundary line over on, that lot they want to extend over, like I said, there's nothing that I can find anywhere on the deeds. The only thing I found on that frontage was the survey they just did. And the survey measurements does not match the deed, like I said. The small plot of land that they want to put onto lot 16 is, I believe, 20.66 and 44 feet long. So if you're going to say that that's enough to put a driveway in, well, that's your call. But my concern is they say it's going to ease any tensions in the future between the two properties, but there's no plan to put the drainage down through there. So how do you know if the city decides, hey, we got to go in there, we got to extend a storm drain, or we got to put in a storm drain? And how do you know 44 feet is going to be enough? You have nothing in front of you that tells you what's going to be done there. So it may not solve that problem at all. So that all said, I don't think that it should be approved if there's not enough evidence. The survey that was done, I believe, has some flaws in it, and that needs to be looked at, and those flaws resolved or addressed before you approve anything to get moved. Because the lot lines don't look right on that survey compared to the deeds. I know they're not correct to the deeds. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
No questions?
Is there anyone else? No, I guess not. Is there anyone else to speak in opposition?
So good evening. My name is Steve Miller. I live at 38 Thornton Street. I want to well, I'm here to speak in opposition of this variance. So I want to briefly give you my background so you understand my background and experience as they pertain to my comments, which are all directly related to what's in the packet that was given before you requesting the variance. I received a Master of Science degree from Yale in Wildlife and Ecosystem Ecology, and I've worked for over 45 years as a science and environmental educator. I am currently on the board of directors of the Seabrook Hampton Estuaries Alliance and served 18 years on the Portsmouth Conservation Commission, 15 years as chair. I am also past president of the Advocates for the North Mill Pond and served as the local advisory committee facilitator for a project which created the watershed restoration plan for Hodgson Brook, which is the main freshwater stream into the North Mill Pond. So the application for 12 Rue Street has several mistakes and exaggerations that need to be clarified before any potential need to be challenged and clarified, and that's why I'm here, before any potential next steps in the planning process, and therefore accepted as fact once they get past this board. In the introduction to the variance application, the first paragraph there is a statement that the city inadvertently merged Lot 16 with Lot 12 in the past, and then the lots were restored to independent status by the planning board in 1988. The merged lot, well, really it wasn't merged. When the original owner bought the lot, it was one large lot, and if you look at the map on page 19 of the public comments that were given to you, it shows the original lot, which combined 8 of those lots that were mentioned earlier. So that was established by the owner, or the original owner, the former owner, who bought the property from McCourt. And the development plans, which are page 20 of the public comment section, show that. But those were set up by the former owner for the development of the lot. I believe that this was done to facilitate getting the necessary after the fact wetland permit to show there was one big lot, and it was to show that there was a reduced impact because the lot was so large. And in fact, when the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services permit was approved for that original building, which is the house on Lot 12, when that was approved, one of the conditions of the permit was that a large area of the original wetlands in the southern corner and eastern shore of the combined lots, or the big lot that was originally purchased from McCourt, was in fact to be left in its natural state. The permit states, I quote, "This area to remain in its natural state, Wetlands Board number permit F753, unquote. Once the wetland permit was obtained and the house on Lot 12 was built, the former owners, through the planning board, proper process, separated Lot 16 from Lot 12. The subdivision of the land clearly shows the wetland permit condition, again, quote from the permit, this area to remain in its natural wetland state, or natural state, Wetlands Board permit number F753, unquote, on the southeastern portion of Lot 16. This condition is not on the map that you received in the variance application. It's clearly shown in the former maps, all done by the former owner, established by the former owner. So the establishment of creating separate Lot 12 and 16 by the former owner, I believe, were done to reduce the property taxes for the former owners, and they established it as an undevelopable lot. It has the conditions from the wetland permit, and this was done totally appropriately because it was an unbuildable lot, and they didn't want to pay taxes on it as a buildable lot. So nearly half of the lot is within, as some mentioned earlier, so speaking to Lot 16, nearly half of the lot is within the 10-year floodplain, and most of the lot is within the 100-year floodplain. which gets at the heart of the variance application in front of you. Clearly, the variance requested is to open the door to develop Lot 16. I believe granting a variance for the lot line change to accommodate a driveway into Lot 16 violates the conditions of the State Wetland Board Permit F753. I believe to negate the permit conditions is wrong and a violation of the established oversight of the State Wetlands Board and is contrary to the public interest as per your criteria number 1. The wetland permit also required that the development of Lot 12, correct, Lot 12, I sometimes get them mixed, Lot 12, build stormwater swales. It was a condition on the permit to accommodate stormwater runoff. As Lot 16 and 12 are the low point of the area, these lots have naturally been the receiver of stormwater runoff as it makes its way to the North Mill Pond. With the fill in the house on Lot 12, a lot of fill was brought in when the house was built. With the fill in the house on Lot 12, the Wetlands Board at the time knew stormwater runoff would be a problem as it's been in this area. So they put in as a condition of the wetland permit to build stormwater swales. It is not clear, and there were some comments later in the wetland permit as to whether they were built, but it's not clear these swales were ever built. But the water, of course, nonetheless finds its way to the North Mill Pond. And it does so by going around the house in the fill that's on Lot 12 and naturally goes on both sides of the house, but mostly it goes on the southern side of the house because that's the low lying point off of Ruth Street. And a lot of comments were brought up about this stormwater. So it is not clear that they were built, the swales, but the water finds its way to the North Mill Pond. The statements in the discussion of criteria 1 in your packet, non-contrary to the public interest, state that the variance would simplify and facilitate future stormwater management as the variance would establish the city would only have to work with the owners of Lot 16. And that's just not true. The water runs right down between the two, right along the lot line of 12 and 16, as it will in the future, and as noted by the applicant that this is a problem, and also some of the board. So it runs right down between lot 12 and 16, and this swale-like area basically was created by the fill that the house now sits on, and lot 16 is a lower lot there. So whether a variance is granted or not, any future stormwater management will require the cooperation of the owners of both lots. My opposition to granting the variance also includes my concern for stormwater management. This was a concern by several neighbors at the time Lot 16 was developed in 1988. The original wetlands on Lots 16 and 12, as documented in the photographs in the wetland permit, there was requirement that photographs of existing conditions be done prior to the fill being brought in, and those photographs clearly show the receiver of the area's wetlands or stormwater, and these were the original wetlands on Lot 16 and Lot 12, which were upland from the shore of North Mill Pond, but included most of the property along the shore. So they received the increased volumes of water during rain events, and the size of these wetlands was created by the natural volumes of the water that they received. With the fill and the development of Lot 12, the receiving wetlands are much smaller.
Sorry, sir. We have a 5-minute limit. I'm going to ask you to wrap this
Which
up.
I understand, and I have like one more paragraph and I'll be done. And but it hasn't really been adhered to tonight, the 5-minute limit. This is the first time it's been mentioned,
Yeah,
just
but,
as a comment. So I'm almost done.
yeah, but I did mention it, so let's see if we can do
I
that.
will speed up and be done in a second. So with the fill and development of Lot 12, the receiving wetlands are much smaller currently. This leads to a backup of stormwater upslope as the water has increased resistance to get to the North Mill Pond Stormwater is a problem in many homes in the area, with wet basements being very common, and backflows of stormwater into yards a common occurrence. The development of Lot 16 will only make these matters worse, and I believe would diminish property values in the area your criteria for. I also take issue with the examples given in the discussion of criteria 5. The examples given to similar variances given by the city are all clearly and were clearly buildable lots, just lacking the required road frontage. They are not wetlands with restrictions. Lot 16 has never been a buildable lot. The lot in Lot 16 was established by the former owners, not the city as implied in your packet. And a vast majority of Lot 16 is also within that 100-foot buffer as noted earlier, with only a small portion of Lot 16 outside the wetland buffer and theoretically buildable. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak in opposition?
Hi, my name is Tony Lane. I live at 47 Thornton Street. And a butter to Ruth Street, but technically our address is on Thornton Street. And my wife and I have been residents there for 20 years. And in April 2024, we became concerned when we noticed that the current owners of 12 Ruth Street had begun to systematically destroy the wetland vegetation in Lot 16, next to their home. We've documented that destruction, and with some support from the City of Portsmouth, we attempted to halt it, but we've been unsuccessful. And instead now we have submitted, when the owners have submitted this application for a variance, the idea that they just want it and they'll do something else later is not future thinking. The building permit they've put forward is for a 2.5-story, 3,000 plus square foot house. That little house on the corner, that's the one. Okay, so it's not theoretical. However, I'm going to stick to the points now because my neighbours and friends have already covered most of these. So I'm going to stick to the points. Everyone else I noticed, this is my first time doing this, so you have to excuse me. But I noticed everyone else stuck to the 5 points. The applicant stuck to 5 points, and so I'm going to address those 5 points. The first one, not contrary to the public interest. This has been covered, thereby making the existing planning board approved lot more compliant with today's code. The planning board never approved lot 16 as a buildable lot. Never. Okay? Lot 16 is not board approved. The application says that the corrective deed in 1988 establishes it as such, but it does not. Read it. It's in the packet. Read the corrective deed from 1988. Steve has already told you exactly why 1988 corrective deed was put together. It was so that they didn't have to pay taxes on the lot that they got approval for. They somehow managed to agree with McCourt to retroactively do a corrective deed. So that's factually incorrect. Sorry. So this first point, factually incorrect. The next one, again, has been covered about what happens with the stormwater issue, and as various people have pointed out, this doesn't affect it. They might still need to negotiate with the new owners of 12, because it's up for sale, and lot 16 for whoever's going to live there. So the last part of this, and this one hasn't been brought up yet, the lot line adjustment will not change the character of the neighbourhood, in that the neighbourhood is zoned as GRA, and the applicant's plan is to keep lot 16 residential. Underneath that, you'll see the tax document from the city, which definitely shows the zone as GRA, but the description of land use, and the land use was mentioned by the applicant tonight, but the description of land use is 1320 RES ACL NUD, right? Stands for residential accessory land undevelopable. That's from today's tax law. So the tax document for today, yes, it's in a GRA zone, but is and always has been undevelopable. That's why it was made. It was made so they didn't have to pay tax. Okay, so that's part number one. Really have to get through these, and honestly, I agree that.
I would like you to speak to what we have to do tonight.
Right.
We have not, our decision tonight is not about what might be built there, or even if there's water running down the property. It's whether that water will run down on the lot line when it's here, or the lot line when it's there.
I only referenced
We're just
it in
moving the
relation
lot
to
line.
part
And I
number
wish
one.
at this hour of the night you would speak directly to what is on our agenda tonight.
I believe I just did that because all of those points I just made were all contradicting things that are stated in the first criteria that you have to. So you can't accept criteria number one if 1, 2, 3 statements on it are incorrect, is my feeling. You may disagree, but I feel that you can't approve. You can't say they completed number one if they've made 3 serious mistakes in describing it. So I'll go to number 2, and they're all
It has
brief.
been 5 minutes, and I would like you to wind down.
Okay.
And in terms of letting people go longer, once we start asking questions, that is a different clock. So I have been treating everybody fairly.
Okay. So, number 2, the spirit of the ordinance is observed because Lot 16 is located at a dead-end street and the variance doesn't present the same crowding concerns that a reduced frontage along a busier linear street would produce. So consider this, against that criteria, any additional road access from that circle to Lot 16 would reduce the effective turnaround area. It would therefore conflict with the original aim of making Ruth Street in 1971, which was clearly stated that it was to improve the traffic and safety of that road. So there's also the question of where will the city put the snow if they can't put it at the end of that block. Anyway, so that's number 2. That was an easy one. Okay. Number 3. Again, this is one argument, and I'll just say that on number 3, substantial justice done, that they talk about negotiating with 2 owners. The strip doesn't go to the pond. As people have said, it's a small strip. If they want to row their kayaks down the first bit off the circle and then somehow get into the pond, it doesn't cover it. So basically, the criteria for number 3 are not met in my view. Number 4, the adjustment is not expected to diminish surrounding property values because the planning board approved this subdivision in 1902 as separate residential lots, and they go on to say, you can read it all, that since 1902 the lot lines have changed, yada, yada, yada. But the planning board did not make that build any of those buildable lots in 1902. The thing that made them buildable lots was the road being, first of all, the lots being combined for number 2 Ruth Street, and secondly, in 1971, the establishment of 5 Ruth Street, and that was when Ruth Street was born. Ruth Street was born in 1971. And therefore, they say that the lot line changes since then have not altered the value of the properties, but all the other lot lines were basically 50-foot parcels that were rolled up to make bigger ones. This is not that. This is a whole different set of parcels that were chopped up in a completely different way, and adding more to trying to reinstate 1902 lot lines in 2025 will definitely affect the property values around Ruth Street, Thornton Street, and even Dennett Street. So that's my criteria there. So I'm on the last one. Okay.
Please.
On the last one, number 5. The statement is this: the Lot 16's condition was created by the city's own actions in 1902 and 1971, and not by the applicants. In 1988, the city itself acknowledged this and restored Lot 16 as an approved subdivision of lot record. The evidence clearly does not support that. After 1971, when McCourt created Ruth Street and gave it to the city, created a circle with some easement, the next ones weren't, everything else at the bottom of that street was owned by McCourt. When he drew up the plan with Flores in 1987, Wetland Permit 753, and I do have to ask you to look at this one, because this is in the public comments, page 19, and if you could pull that up for me, it's really crucial, because it clearly shows that this lot was created by Flores and McCourt as one lot. And I really need you to see this, because it is crucial, because the statement has been made by the applicant that this was not the correct deed. Is it possible to zoom in? I won't touch you.
Please do not, touch. But you're also on 10 minutes now, and I would really appreciate if you let us...
I need you to see that this is one lot, it isn't two, okay? And therefore, the point is that for number 5 is that they say that the city itself, city's actions created this subdivision, and it is not. It was the people who purchased it and decided they wanted to pay less taxes. Okay? So that's 5 criteria, and in my view, all 5 of them have flaws that need to be addressed. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Anyone to speak to, for, or against? You have 5 minutes, and I would really love it if you said something we hadn't heard before. Please.
We get to ask questions?
No, you don't.
Briefly, of the relevant stuff, because there's a lot of conditional use arguments that you just heard, the one thing that does impact is whether there was a criticism of whether there is a 0.66. There are some deeds that are, plans rather, that are recorded that incorrectly show that 409-foot difference in that 1971 deed. The lots are 50 feet. We have a frontage of 0.66. That's the 9 inches for 409 feet. That's recorded that's actually in the deed.
No, you may not. No.
So I don't have the benefit of seeing what was just given to you to respond to, so I'm going off of what was just articulated. The conflating of making it more compliant is not with being a buildable lot. It's more compliant with the frontage, and that's what we're here. We're making it more compliant with the frontage. I can't really speak to any reason why lots were merged, other than I do know that a husband owned one parcel, the wife owned the other parcel. They were inadvertently merged, and in 1988 they were separated, and there was a reference to a building, lot 16 not being buildable to the extent that that is relevant, but I don't think it is relevant. The reference on the DES permits are below the 100-foot, are in the buffer. That's what they're talking about. But I just wanted to briefly talk about the survey has been done, confirmed that there is that 0.66 frontage, and that the homeowner is trying to expand. Thank you.
Thank you. We vote if we want to continue?
Yes, we're almost there.
Okay. The public hearing is closed. Yes, did you have?
I had a question, but I guess it's too late.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't know what you were going to say.
I mean, I think the issue here is that the lot line adjustment is for the purpose of making this a buildable lot. So I
have no idea. That is not what's being asked for here. We can surmise, from my opinion, we can surmise as much as we want, and I don't really think I need to know when lots were merged or when they were flooded or what. Do we want this lot to be moved over here? I do think, to me it seems like a very simple question. Whether or not it's buildable will be someone else's problem down the road. And maybe I'm being naive, but it is not, I don't see it as our problem tonight. Tell me why it is.
Why don't we let Mr. Ram talk?
Madam Chair, to move this along, I'll make a motion to deny the applicant's request as presented and advertised.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Thank you. And we've heard a lot tonight. This really comes down to a pretty simple question of, is there some advantage? In fact, the criteria I think that I will focus on that it fails, it only needs to fail on one. It's very unusual that this is one of the ones that it would fail on, but to me, granting the variance would do substantial justice. So the applicant here is asking to move a lot line for the purposes of being able to access this lot. They're saying, well, we're not building anything on it. So really the only purpose for accessing it as being presented to us tonight is for recreational purposes or being, after I sell the adjacent lot, I can continue to bring my canoe or my kayak or my lawn chair or whatever I want to that lot. So really, what is so that's what the applicant is getting in that balancing test. And what is the city, what are we getting back in terms of our zoning ordinance and in terms of benefit back to the city? The applicant has kind of said, well, we've talked to the city about a stormwater easement that might go across this property and this could make it easier. There's nothing in here that I've seen that says that the city has looked at this, that they have an interest in it, that they recognize that there's a problem, that they recognize that the best solution is to go across their lot and this would make that any more feasible. I just don't see that as a legitimate argument of something that says the city is getting a benefit out of it. The other part is they're not creating a buildable lot out of it. It would still be one that would have to come before this board. They will still be creating still a largely non-conforming lot. So yeah, they're less than a foot right now. They'll get 20 feet-ish of not buildable lot frontage. That'll also be in a very awkward location relative to the street, right? So it's going to be on the very end of a street, and that's going to be like the new frontage that will be there. What's the benefit, again, to the city and to, moving forward with what the zoning ordinance is trying to accomplish? We're really not accomplishing anything here that benefits the city in that balancing test, in my opinion. So with that, I think it clearly fails on that criteria. There's just the balance is just not there. We're getting a little tiny bit of something. I know that the applicant has kind of said, well, there's this easement problem. Easements are everywhere. Easements are on all kinds of properties. I've worked with title attorneys. I see them on deeds all the time. If the simple act is that you want to continue to get some kind of a simple access on occasion to continue to use this lot in a recreational manner, then that to me is about one of the most straightforward easements that you could ask for. And of course, it would have to be set up, since they own both properties now, it would have to be set up at the time that they would sell the property. You can't give yourself an easement, but that could be part of the conditions that are put into the sale of it so that they can continue to have it. I think it's very straightforward. The applicant can get exactly what they need through the easement process. There's no benefit, very little benefit to them, and a lot of burden and no benefit to the city. So it fails on the substantial justice.
And I agree. That's exactly the prong I think that it fails on. I am an attorney. I don't do property law anymore. My house is burdened by easement right in the front of it. It's been there for 100 years. Easements are very easily written, recorded, and enforced. And there is no, the argument that this lot line adjustment is needed in lieu of an easement, to me, is just a fatal argument.
Yes, Mr. Neese.
So I won't support this motion. It's not clear to me that substantial justice means that the variance has to benefit the city. In fact, what the substantial justice guidance is that we get says that substantial justice means denial, means the benefit to the public by denial outweighs the loss to the applicant. But that's not how this argument was worded here tonight. The argument was, we're not getting any benefit to the city by granting the variance.
And I agree. For me, that isn't what rings true. But what does ring true is I don't see the hardship. If you can get what you need through the easements, I just don't see the hardship. For me, that is where this fails. May I go? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I just wanted to make a couple of comments. I guess my main concern or whatever is, so I actually, whether or not I would prefer easement or a lot line adjustment, to me, isn't that important to the decision here. And also, either way, this is not a buildable lot with whatever change it is, or isn't. But we're not considering whether or not it's a buildable lot. I guess the main thing that I found as a positive for this is that while still non-conforming, whether or not this is a buildable lot, making it closer to conforming is a odd thing to deny. I do actually, during this course of this application, I had some concerns about the way in which information was presented or not, or misrepresented. I guess what I'm struggling with is if we're specifically just looking at this lot line adjustment, which is what we're actually looking at, it's taking a less conforming property and making it closer to conforming, but either way it's non-conforming, so any future application would need to be looked at as that application, but that's not this application. So I guess that's, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, just add a little bit more to my motion. I mean, I am centered on that one. So the general public purposes of saying that we need 100-foot frontage, right, which is what we're really is to create lots that are ultimately buildable, that have proper access on them, all those sorts of things. Yes, the applicant is making it slightly closer to that 100 feet, but it's tiptoeing in that direction. I don't see where it gives any substantial benefit towards, and I'm not even sure the planning board would accept it, but I think even at our level, to me, it's not overcoming what the ordinance is trying to do and saying that lots shouldn't look like this, right? And in particular, in the way it's aligned to the street, I think is a further evidence that it's against the public purposes of what we're trying to do with the ordinance to go and determine how lots should look and be configured. And again, the benefit that the applicant is looking for, to me, is very, very minimal. And the detriment towards what the zoning ordinance is trying to accomplish is here. It fails the balancing test. Hardship, I mean, there is some question there as well. What's unique about this property? I guess it's isolated. It is kind of in this odd location, but at the same point in time, if it's not intended to be built, from a hardship standpoint, there's really not a lot of need to recreate lot lines, which is not something we should take lightly. Recreating lot lines is being done for some very specific purposes, and doing that just simply so that you can access it for recreational purposes, I just think it doesn't meet that criteria either.
Mr. Neese.
May I, through the chair, ask Mr. Ram a question?
Oh, of course, you may ask him to.
Sorry. So I guess I'm a little confused on the argument that this is a lot that's not intended to be built. I mean, we know that they've submitted, we know because it's available on our webpage, city webpage, that they've submitted a conditional use permit to build a structure on this lot. I believe the applicant said that they intended to build a structure, or at least when the question was asked, or maybe a statement was made that you can't build a lot, the applicant said, yes, we can. We can't build a structure. The applicant said, yes, we can. So I just want to understand why you're saying that there's no intention to build, that this is just for access.
So part of the argument that I've heard from other board members and even from the applicant themselves was, oh no, that's just something we could maybe do. We'd have nothing that's been put before us that shows a home. When somebody comes before us and says, hey, I want to make this a buildable lot, but I'm not fully conforming, here's my plan. Here's how it fits in. Here's where the building's going to go. Here's how it relates back to the wetlands. All the other questions that we had, none of that has been addressed by the applicant. So in my mind, the applicant is not before us, and they semi-reiterated after they kind of realized, well, maybe we're saying something that we shouldn't be going forward with, kind of said, nope, this is all just about creating a nice, neat access so I don't have to get an easement. That really was the crux of their argument that was put before us. That's their job to argue that before us, not me to argue why it should be becoming a buildable lot. I have seen nothing that tells me that's their intent.
Everything in their proposal to us only talked about how they would rather have ownership than an easement. And for me, that's, okay.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to clarify is, in the same way that they're not, this application, well, let me back up. I don't, and I'm pretty sure the guidance is that we don't make our decisions solely based on what's the applicant's pitch, if you will. Like when they're adjusting their 5 criteria, we can use that, but we don't need to use that only. And it is true that the application didn't seem to suggest making it a buildable lot, but we also know that the conditional use permit for a proposed building exists, as was revealed during this presentation. And I guess I'm saying that in the same way that we're not saying it's not a buildable lot, we're also not saying it is a buildable lot. I'm just saying that we're not deciding on that right now. I understand the obvious, like independent of our actual criteria and decision making, it's obvious that the intent is to make this a buildable lot, but it seems to me that that decision should be made when that's the application is all. Yeah.
Was that a raised hand, Beth? Are there any further discussions? Would you like any more clarification on the motion on the criteria as we have been requested?
I would like to know exactly which criteria now we're arguing for denial. Originally, the one was substantial justice. I heard some council members say they thought hardship was as well. And then I think there was a spirit of the ordinance argument made because of the, maybe I'm inferring that spirit of the ordinance because of the 100-foot desire is the wrong word. So I just want to make sure that I know what they are.
Okay, yes.
Sure, I will add to my argument if it helps to maybe it will cause a vote change or not. Sure, so spirit of the ordinance, I mean, so what are the general characteristics of the neighborhood? All the other properties here that are there all do have at least some significant level of frontage onto Ruth Street, including the other lot that the applicant owns. It is like on a corner, goes up a little bit, crosses over. So the ordinance is trying to create lots that meet that requirement, but the applicant is asking for only creates a very incremental improvement on that. And again, what incremental improvement it makes is in a very awkward location relative to the actual street that it will be fronted on. I mean, it's the end of a street, right? And then the other part is that the substantial justice, I think I've gone over that pretty thoroughly. And I'll just leave it at those two. If the second wants to add in something additional, or any other board member wants to add in something additional, I'm fine with it. I think I've said more than enough on all of this at this point.
I would concur. I don't think there's anything needed to be added to the motion.
Sorry, can I make one more? And I do appreciate the motion and the sentiment and everything. I guess for me, if for substantial justice, if there's like the most minimal benefit to the applicant and essentially no harm. I know there was testimony to perceived harm and everything, but for this actual lot line adjustment, which doesn't change the physical features of the location, it's not necessarily, so even if there's not a benefit or perceived to be a minimal benefit, it's not harming. So if there's no harm, then it's
But the loss to the public from granting to the variance is more significant than the benefit to the applicant.
Okay.
We're over engineering this, and I'm an engineer, and I'm saying we're over engineering.
Yeah, so you can imagine how I feel. Okay, are we ready to call the question? Or
Call it.
No, if you have more questions, I want to
I'll stop. I don't have any more questions.
Okay.
I disagree with some of the comments that have been made. I think that we're not interpreting the substantial justice provision correctly. So I don't agree with that one. Spirit of the ordinance, you might have convinced me on that, and it only takes one for disapproval.
And I'm still on the hardship, so. All right. A yes vote denies the request. Mr. Neese?
Yes.
Mr. Mantle?
Yes.
Ms. Marchison?
Yes.
Mr. Rain?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
No.
And the chair votes yes. So your request is not approved this evening. But can we adjourn real fast so I can go down there? Sure. Can we? All right. Is there a move to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
I want to come talk to you guys.